Welcome back, young wizard. Tonight we walk together through the most powerful wizards to ever step foot in this world, told slowly and calmly, so you may drift to rest while listening. If you are ready to rest now, subscribe and comment what hours in your country. It is magical to see different people hearing this story at their own time. There is a quiet way to speak about great power. We set the wand down on the table. We breathe. We let the room grow still. Then we begin to measure, not with noise, not with shouting, only with careful steps and patient thought. The question is simple. Who are the most powerful wizards of all time? The answer is not loud. It is a soft ledger that we unfold together, line by line, name by name, in calm detail that lets the mind imagine every light and every shadow. To measure power, we look at what a wizard can do. We notice how many kinds of magic they control. We watch how they hold themselves in a duel. We watch how they shape a room, a battle, a nation. We think about their choices, we mark their limits. We ask if their strength was steady or if it burned fast and faded. We pay attention to tools that made them stronger. We ask if the tool would matter without the hand that held it. We do not rush, we move with care, because a bedtime journey is not a race. It is a path where each stone matters. This story takes the long view. It speaks gently about feats. It avoids heavy words. It keeps distance from harsh scenes. When a fall happens, we call it a sad end. When pain appears, we step around it with respect. We do not dwell on darkness. We focus on craft, on patience, on the slow building of skill. In this way, the list becomes more than a ranking. It becomes a study of how power lives in a person, how it grows, how it costs, how it must be guided by the quiet law inside the heart. Before we place the first name, we set a soft rule. Power is not only force. Power is control. Power is clarity. Power is the ability to change the shape of what is happening without breaking yourself in the act. A storm is strong. A hand that can guide a storm with care is stronger. A single bright spell can stun the eye. A sequence of simple spells placed with perfect timing can win a war. We will honor both kinds. The bright flash and the patient weave. We will also honor the weight of time. Some legends lived in older days. Their craft set the ground for all who came later. Their proof comes to us as quiet echoes. We will listen for those echoes and give them their space. Now we let the candlelight show the first page. The ink tells of names who stood near the threshold. They are close. They leave strong marks. But we agree to keep the path narrow. We nod to those honorable names and say not yet. There is stillness again. The first line on the ledger waits. We start from 20 and walk upward. Each step a little stronger. Each step a little brighter. You can rest at any point. You can pick up the trail again when you wake. The story will still be here. The next name will still be waiting with calm patience. What happens now may surprise you. Many think power must always look the same. They think it must roar, but sometimes the craft that matters most is the one that moves without noise. The kind that reshapes a fight before it begins. The kind that hides a plan in plain sight. The kind that saves friends because it knows how to bend a moment with a small touch. The kind that changes a destiny by stepping one foot to the left instead of to the right. This will be our theme here. That power can be quiet. That quiet power can win. We begin with number 20. A witch whose gift turns a room into a mask and a mirror a witch who can shift face and hair and age and mood with the same ease one might change a scarf. She is playful in memory. She is brave in service. She is quick in thought. She steps into danger because the work calls for it. She is an aura who trades blows when she must. She is a scout when that will save lives. Her edge is not only the wand, her edge is who she can become at a moment's notice. A doorkeeper, a messenger, a stranger who is not a stranger at all. Her gift is a quiet hammer that strikes through disguise and time. Think of a narrow lane at dusk. The street lamps blink on. A pair of dark figures wait at the far end. Our witch does not rush. She shifts a curl. She moves the line of her jaw. She makes her eyes a shade deeper. She sets her shoulders with a hint of weary calm. The figures relax because they think they know who is walking toward them. A few light words pass between them. A few careful steps bring them closer to the place she has already chosen. When the moment arrives, she bends the scene in 3 small motions. A trip of a boot, a wand raised just so, a quiet charm that binds hands before the minds that guide those hands can catch up. Nothing loud, no smoke, no grand flare. Yet the work is done. This is power as a soft instrument. This is why she takes the first spot on our list. In open battle, she is less a hammer and more a silk rope. She is not the most fearsome duelist in a straight line. She will not stand unshaken against the darkest legends, but her value on a long night is high. She fills gaps, she protects flanks, she carries messages across a city that has turned into a maze. She changes the odds by being in 2 places in 1 hour. She fools eyes that think they are sharp. She buys time. Time can save a life. Time can change a tide. Power lives in that buy. It is easy to miss, but we will not miss it here. There is also warmth in her. That warmth helps with a kind of magic that is not taught in books. Teams move better when they trust the person next to them. A laugh in a hard moment removes a layer of fear. A kind word steadies a hand. A bright spirit can hold a line for 10 minutes more. That does not add to a wand beam, but it adds to victory. It adds to safety. It adds to the chance that those who fight beside you will go home. That too is part of power. We count it with care. Of course, every gift has limits. Shape-shifting does not replace raw force. In a duel where shields crack and stone breaks underfoot, she will yield to giants who make the earth ring when they stamp. In a clash where ancient curses fall like rain, she will choose cover. She will choose the plan. She will choose the move that avoids the worst part of the storm. This is wisdom. It keeps her alive. It keeps her useful. We note the limit. We see it with respect. We let it set her place on the list. It does not dim the worth of what she brings. There is one more piece to her page. She teaches us that skill and joy can live together, that play can coexist with duty, that a grin before a mission can make the mission lighter. In a world that often grows heavy, this is a quiet kind of light. It makes other lights possible. That kind of light is not easy to measure, but we feel it. You can feel it now as you breathe, as the room grows softer, as the night settles around your shoulders like a blanket. So, our ledger begins with a shapeshifter who turns small choices into large outcomes. She reminds us that force is not the only path. She reminds us that a plan carried by courage can move mountains in silence. The ink dries on the first line. The candle flickers. The page waits for the next name. We will turn it soon. The power will rise a little more. The air will grow a little brighter. and you can follow as far as your eyes will stay open. When they close the story, we'll pause on this line like a bookmark. When you return, we will continue together. Next, we will meet a wizard whose strength comes from calm craft and careful ties. A wizard who can change a room with a word and a smile. He collects talent. He senses promise. He knows how to turn knowledge into shelter. He shows a different kind of power, one that grows from the people who gather around him. Rest now if you wish. When you wake, we will walk to that door and knock with a gentle hand. We turn the page. The ink is warm. The room is quiet. At 19, we place a wizard whose strength is not a shout, but a gentle pressure that changes a room without raising dust. His name is Horace Slughorn. He is round at the edges. He laughs, he collects stories, he collects people too. In that soft circle of chairs and teacups, power takes a shape that many overlook, yet it is real. It moves doors. It turns chances into certain steps. It protects lives when storms begin to rise. Slughorn's gift is selection. He can see promise before the world does. A first year speaks and he hears a future. A sixth year brews and he sees a career. He writes a note and a path appears where there was only fall. He invites a student to sit closer to the fire, and the air around that student becomes lighter, safer, clearer. This is not loud spell work. It is the quiet craft of attention. It is the placement of people where they will grow. It is the kind of care that multiplies itself for years. Many wands become steadier because he bothered to notice them when it mattered. He is a master of potions. In his hands, a cauldron is not a bowl, but a field. Heat is time. Steam is a hint. Each slice is a sentence in a long paragraph that ends with a solution, a cure, a window opened. This work teaches patience. It teaches restraint. It teaches that the right effect often arrives from the smallest change, made at the right moment. That lesson travels with his students into every other branch of magic. That lesson is also the way he casts his life. He stirs a conversation and lets it settle. He adds one guest to a table and the whole table changes. He knows how to coax a result without breaking the glass that holds it. There is prudence in him. He loves comfort. He loves safety. He hides when evil grows near. And this can look like weakness. Sometimes it is. Yet that same instinct also keeps him alive long enough to help when help will count. He returns when the choice is clear. He stands when standing matters. He fights in the end, not as a hero who seeks a song, but as a teacher who will not let his house, his school, his children be taken from him. He is not the fastest wand on a field of open curses. He is not the kind who breaks a wall with a glance, but he is the kind who tightens a lime so it will not snap. He is the kind who brings others with him, and the number of ones at your side is its own kind of force. Influence can be a spell. It can be cast with introductions, with letters, with the placement of a chair next to another chair. Slughorn's living room is a web of gentle threads. A healer meets a researcher. A diplomat meets a future head of a department. A brilliant child meets a source of confidence that lasts 10 years. None of this throws light against a ceiling. None of this shakes a tower. Yet the results reach farther than many duels. Promotions happen. Resources appear. A helpful policy takes shape because two people once shared candied pineapple, and a story about a class. The world moves a little to the right. That movement saves a life that no one will ever count because danger never had the chance to arrive. He is also a reminder that power has a cost when misread. He once praised charm that hid a darker hunger. He once admired a bright boy's careful mind without tasting the iron underneath. That mistake is heavy. It lives in his chest. It thickens his breath at night. To bear it, he does something hard and good. He changes. He refuses to keep looking away. He walks back into the light of the real problem and helps as best he can. He shares a memory that hurts to touch. He chooses truth over pride. In that moment, you can see a deeper strength than a stunning spell. It is the strength to face your own part in the story and still do the right thing in the end. In his classroom, precision is kindness. A wrong cut today becomes a wrong life tomorrow if no one says a word. So he says the word. He corrects with a soft tone and a firm hand. He praises without feeding vanity. He shows students what excellence feels like, so they will recognize it again and again after they leave. This is protection too. A steady hand at a bench becomes a steady hand in a crisis. A habit of listening to small changes in a simmer becomes the habit of listening to small changes in a crowd, in a friend, in a country. When trouble stirs, those who learned patience from him can hear it early. They can act before the boy. On the last night, when the castle needed every light, Slughorn did not hide behind drapes and tea. He organized. He fetched help. He placed himself where his weight would count. He did not duel for glory. He dueled to hold a line and give space for others to do what only they could do. Power is not only the wand that ends the last fight. Power is also the set of hands that make the last fight winnable. It is the clear head that steadies the many so the one can strike true. In that way, his influence does not fade at the edge of a battlefield. It grows there. It becomes visible. It becomes a circle that will not break. Think of him now as a shape in lamplight, a heavy armchair, a low table, an old gramophone. His voice rises and falls around a story. He is making someone feel seen. He is making someone feel ready. The potion in the corner breathes a slow curl of steam. In that curl you can read the lesson he has carried all his life, that the right heat at the right time can change the whole brew, that you never force a mixture if you can help it, that a gentle nudge, given early, can spare everyone a fire later. We rank him here, not higher, because his strength is not the kind that tears through ranks of enemies alone. He is not the storm. He is the steady pressure that makes a storm bearable. He is the elder who knows who should stand where and who should speak to whom, and when a retreat is wisdom rather than fear. He is the brewer who turns a shelf of ordinary plants into a clear vial that can tip a day toward hope. He is the friend whose address book is a shield. He is the teacher whose praise lands exactly when it is most needed. If you have ever felt braver because someone important believed in you for a moment, you already know his magic. Breathe in, breathe out, let the picture fade. The ledger moves forward by one calm line. The page cools, the candle waits. Ahead of us stands a man who met darkness in doorways and in alleys and in the spaces between 1 second and the next. He did not carry a salon. He did not pour tea. He carried scars and a single lesson he spoke like a spell, constant vigilance. His wand arm never slept. His eye turned and would not close. If Slughorn shaped outcomes with warmth and placement, the next wizard shaped them with suspicion that saved lives. The road narrows now. The pace stays slow. The power grows rougher, older, and harder to fake. When you are ready, we will step into that corridor with him and see how a hunter holds a night together with grit and simple, brutal skill. The corridor is narrow and cool. It smells faintly of stone and rain. In that hush, a heavy boot comes down, then another and another. each step placed as if the floor might have an arc in it. The man who walks there is not graceful. He is not pretty. He is a knot of old fights tied together by will. The scar at his lip does not ask for pity. The spinning blue eye set in his face does not blink for comfort. It turns and turns and turns again, as if the world is a map with too many small marks to ignore. He is Alastor Moody, and his magic is the steadiness that keeps a bad night from cracking open. Moody's power is not glitter. It is not the brilliant ribbon of a showy charm. It is a thick cord of habits, wound over years until it will not snap. He enters a room and reads it like a page: door, window, line of fire, blind corner, creak in the left board, draft along the chimney that could hide a thread of smoke. He notes the way a chair faces, the way a picture frame tilts a finger to the left, the way a rug doesn't quite match its own wear patterns. He is a living ward. He is a human perimeter. He makes the safe space by existing inside it with his rules intact. Some wizards rely on a few famous spells. Moody relies on the entire ideal of readiness. Shields on instinct. Jinxes launched without the waste of flourish. Counters that land in the small gap between an enemy's pride and the next breath. He has practiced that gap until it is his home. When curses fall, he moves just enough. When traps spring, he is already off the path they expected. It is not luck. It is the long, slow magic of attention paid for a lifetime. He carries tools, yes. A trunk with secrets. A flask for distrust. A staff-like wand arm that rises in straight lines rather than in arcs. But the tools do not make Moody. The man makes the tools work because his head holds a map of wrong possibilities. He speaks the phrase constant vigilance like a charm, and it works because he has paid the price of it. Short sleep, long memory, edges that never soften even when the fire is kind and the room is full of friends. There is power in that price. It turns him into a wall that stands when others want to sit. It turns him into a storm break that lets braver, brighter lights do their work without being snuffed out. Think of a sting in a crooked alley. The sky has gone the color of old iron. Two figures step from a doorway, wands angled low to hide intent. Moody's pace does not change. His blue eye rolls once, noting a third figure in the reflection on a bottle, noting a fourth crouched on a stair, where dust is missing on only two risers. He breathes. He lets them think the moment belongs to them. Then he gives it back to himself with three movements no wider than the width of a palm. A shield angled like a roof tile. A binding that bites ankles instead of wrists. A disarming flick that sends wands not just away but into a gutter where they will be hard to find again. No thunder. No glory, only a solved problem, and the continued beating of a tired heart. Moody teaches too, in his way. He does not hand out comfort with his lessons. He hands out alarms and drills and stories with edges. But tucked inside the roughness is a kind of care that refuses to lie. He would rather you be frightened now than ruined later. He would rather you practice the boring motion 100 times than fail the one time that matters. He knows the weight of failure too well to be gentle with it. Many students mistake this for coldness. Those who live long enough to understand call it love made of iron. His dueling power is not showy, but it is heavy. He does not chase the dramatic strike. If a small, ugly spell will ruin an enemy's balance and end the matter, he is happy to win by inches. He is content to grind a fight down to breath and reaction and the limit of someone else's patience. He does not fear being called unfair. He believes only in surviving with your team intact. He uses terrain. He uses timing. He uses the hissing quiet after a loud spell to move where no one expects. He is the opposite of reckless. He is the opposite of fragile. There are limits, and they belong on the page with the rest. Age has made some motions slower. Old wounds speak up when the weather changes. Trust, once betrayed, is hard for him to hand out again, and this can cost him help he deserves. He is not a researcher. He is not an inventor of new branches of magic. He is a user of what works, refined until it answers before he finishes the call. That ceiling keeps him from the higher rungs of this list, where scale and invention bend the world in broader ways. But here, at 18, the respect is complete. If you wanted to cross a night full of traps and return in one piece, there are very few names you would choose before his. Moody also carries the strange honor of being imitated by someone darker. That shadow sits around his name like smoke in a clean room. It is important to blow it away when we speak of his power. The false deeds are not his. Still, the echo proves something about the shape he cuts in the world, that even enemies understood how valuable the idea of Moody was, how steadying his presence would feel to the young, how instructive his habits, how formidable his simple ways. To mimic Moody is to admit that he is exactly the kind of anchor an age in danger longs for. Picture him now in a kitchen before dawn. The kettle ticks. The window is a square of near morning gray. He stands with his back to a wall, not out of fear but practice. He checks the door once, then again, not because he doubts himself, but because repetition is a spell and he is casting it. The people he guards sleep on. They will never know that a ward flickered and steadied, that a charm was renewed a few minutes earlier than needed, that a small sound at the eaves was only a branch, but he listened until he was sure. They will only know that they woke up. That is his favorite outcome. It leaves no headline, no story, no statue. It leaves life, and the ordinary day that follows it. Power can be a blaze that draws every eye. Moody's power is the steady hand on a dimmer switch, keeping the room from going black. He is the last person to run when sound breaks in the hall. He is the first to scowl when someone says it will probably be fine. He is the one who counts heads twice before anyone moves. He is the one who eats last because he has been watching the door since the food arrived. In a world that often forgets to lock itself, he is a lock that remembers everyone else. We place him here with gratitude. We accept that his magic is not the sort that makes songs. We accept that it is the sort that makes survivors. In the ledger of power that matters, it matters very much. You can feel it, even now, as your breathing settles into a slower pattern, as your shoulders drop away from your ears, as you imagine the steady sweep of that blue eye along the room you're in. There is comfort in knowing someone like him existed on those long nights when danger moved like fog. There is comfort in adopting a small piece of his habit for yourself. Check the door, breathe, look again. The candle settles, the page cools. We close this line with a nod to an old aura who never stopped doing the boring, brave things. And then, in the quiet that follows, we turn toward another kind of strength. Not the iron bar across a doorway, but the stubborn, private light that lives in a man who never asked to be compared to his brilliant brother, and yet stood, when it counted, with a Patronus bright enough to hold back a cold tide. Next, we will open the door of a small pub and find a goat in the yard and a wand in a tired hand. We will meet Aberforth Dumbledore, and we will see how a gruff heart can still throw a wide shield over the people it refuses to abandon. The door of the small pub opens with a tired sound, like a hinge that has known too many winters. The room is low and dim, the kind of place where the light stays close to the tables and does not bother the ceiling. Behind the bar stands a man who does not ask for company and does not mind it either, so long as it remembers its manners. His shoulders are solid. His eyes are the gray of old smoke. There is a softness hidden under the bristles, but you have to earn it. This is Aberforth Dumbledore. He is not a legend embroidered in gold. He is the other kind of strength, stubborn, practical, and loyal in a way that does not need an audience. His magic does not announce itself with speeches. It is the kind that appears when a problem steps through a door and refuses to leave. You see it in the way he moves a wand as if it were a tool for fixing leaks and quieting storms, not for painting the sky. In his hands, a spell is something you use to make a place safe, to get a child home, to tell a monster it has come to the wrong street. There is no flourish in it, and that is part of why it works. He wastes nothing, not breath, not motion, not hope. There is one light he carries that no one can mistake. On a cold night, in a village where danger collected like frost along the eaves, he faced a darkness that eats breath and remembers fear. He did not try to impress it. He raised a Patronus that was not a banner, but a guardian made of his own memories and his own refusal to be moved. It drove the cold back in a rush of silver, and for a minute the night remembered what warmth felt like. A Patronus is more than a spell, it is a statement about what lives in your chest when the room goes empty. His was steady and sure. It said in its simple shape that he would not let despair take what it wanted without a fight. He is not his brother, and that is the point. The world knows one Dumbledore as a name that bends history. The other is a hand that keeps the door open and the fire lit. Aberforth does not chase visions. He does not plan centuries. He feeds people who are hungry. He hides people who must not be found. He keeps a passageway open between a school that is starting to feel like a cage and a place where frightened feet can breathe for a minute before they try again. This is magic as shelter. It is not glamorous, but it is power of a kind that shows its true size only when the head count is finished and everyone is still there. In the last days, when the castle tightened like a fist and the sky over the towers went a hard, unnatural color, his pub became a hinge on which hope turned. Through a painted doorway with a familiar face, he made a path that the cruelest hands could not see. Students crossed, orders whispered, food and blankets and bits of courage crossed too. It was not a grand spell, it was a decision that he kept making, hour by hour, while the risk grew teeth. If you have ever held a door for a long time in the wind so others could pass, you know the feeling in his arms. He is a duelist in the way a carpenter is a craftsman, not concerned with applause, very concerned with results. When curses came fast in narrow spaces, he did not try to compete with the loudest magic on the field. He broke lines with timing. He covered retreats with shields that arrived exactly when the roof started to give. He chose targets that mattered, not the ones that would look impressive in a tale told later. He knows how to end a fight by removing the one piece of it that holds the rest together. He knows when to stop a fight and start a rescue. His spell work is clipped, plain, correct. You could copy it and survive. There is sorrow built into him, and it gives his strength its shape. He has lived with a history that does not leave when the lamps go out. He does not ask for sympathy. He keeps the pain like a stone in his pocket and lets it remind him what not to do. You can see that in the way he watches the young when they gather, gruff, impatient sometimes, but precise in his care. If a student needs a breath, he gives it. If a foolish idea needs a hard word, he offers that too. And there is love in the hardness. He will not stand and watch a child be brave for the wrong reasons. People sometimes think that refusal is weakness. Aberforth shows that refusal can be power when the thing you refuse is surrender. He refuses to let fear rewrite the map of his village. He refuses to let famous names decide whether his help counts. He refuses to set aside ordinary kindness just because the times are extraordinary. Power can be the shape of a boundary as much as it is the strength of a blow. He knows how to draw those lines in a way that enemies trip over them without seeing. His limits are part of the fairness of this ledger. He does not reshape the discipline of magic as a scholar might. He does not lead nations across a chessboard of strategy the way a general would. He is not built for long speeches or delicate diplomacy. He can be blunt when a softer touch would move a heart further. He can carry grudges like tools, useful but heavy. These limits keep him from the highest ranks, where scale and invention and command lift some names into a different air. None of that erases what he is. It only sets the frame around it. Think of a late hour in the Hogshead when the front room is empty and the only sound is a brush passing over the bar in slow strokes. He pauses, glances at the window, and you can tell he is counting habit, not fear. He checks the back passage, because things that are important do not stay important by accident. He mutters at a stubborn latch until it yields, and you know somehow that the latch will not dare fail tonight. When footsteps come in the lane, he knows who they belong to before the door swings. He has been listening to this village longer than most of its people have been alive. He reads noise the way other men read newspapers. That is a kind of magic too. When the true night came, and the school became a battlefield, he stepped out of the doorway of his life and into the bright, loud place where choices echo. He did it without a speech. He did it without asking anyone to notice. He did it because he could, and because the ones who could not needed the space his presence would create. There were flashes and smoke and the ringing of stone under stress. There were names shouted that would never be called again in a classroom. He kept his feet. He kept his aim. He kept the promise he seems to have made to himself a long time ago, that whatever others might build or break, he would stand near the ground and make sure the ground held. If you look for glory in him, you will not find it. You will find a good broom repaired twice instead of replaced. You will find cups that do not match, and a bar that cleans up nicely when it has to. You will find a portrait that answers when called because it has been answered 1,000 times before, with patience even when the day was unkind. You will find a man who lets his yes be yes and his no be no, and in a world that often blurs itself, that clarity can feel like a spell cast on the air. So we place Aberforth here, at 17, with a kind of affection that sits well beside respect. He is proof that power can be a promise kept over and over until it becomes the shape of a life. He is proof that you can be a branch on which others rest, even if you will never be the tree everyone points at in the square. He is proof that when the story needs a small, strong hinge to swing on, there is strength enough in a man who would rather be left alone, but will not abandon his own. Breathe once more. Let the room around you grow softer. The page cools, the ink dries. Ahead of us is a different figure. Taller in bearing, quieter in voice, a natural leader whose magic and judgment fit together like two hands. He does not win a room by raising his wand, though he can. He wins it by steady calm, by the sense that plans are already moving even when he has just arrived. We will find him where duty sits easily on the shoulders and the spell work is clean on the first try. When you are ready, we will step toward the rhythmic poise of Kingsley Shacklebolt and see how leadership becomes a kind of shield that covers a whole field at once. The sound of his voice is the first calm in a hard room. It drops the heartbeat by a beat. It makes plans feel possible. He does not hurry when others hurry. He does not raise his wand first. He does not need. The air around him says that he has already measured the door, the window, the distances between four moving hands. This is Kingsley Shacklebolt. His power is composure that does not crack and skill that does not miss. In quiet times he is order, in loud times he is a shield stretched wide enough for many to stand under. He was an Auror of the first rank. That title in his case means more than paperwork and routine patrols. It means he could walk into a room where danger has taken root and walk out with the room returned to the people who belong there. He reads angles. He speaks just enough. His questions lower the temperature around frightened witnesses and stubborn liars alike. When he must act, the spell leaves his wand in a clean line, without drama. When he must wait, he actually waits, which is a rarer skill. He makes arrests that do not turn into brawls, and when brawls are forced upon him, he ends them with balance and care for the bystanders in the walls and on the floor. Kingsley's magic has reach. His shields arrive early and cover more space than most would risk. His disarms do not fling wands in grand arcs. They end fights by removing the right piece from the board. His stunning spells choose the quiet route through a mess of bodies, threading past friends as if they were outlined in soft light only he can see. He is very good at not making a bad scene worse. That is a kind of genius in the field. It means fewer names in the morning reports. It means fewer mothers' hands shaking as they pour tea that day. He understands teams. You can sense it in the way he stands in a hallway, half a step left to another caster a lane, a slight turn of the shoulder, so a young Auror will, without even thinking about it, fall in on his right side where the wall protects one flank. This is placement. As spell work, it looks like nothing. It changes everything. He notices who is running hot and who is holding back too much. He knows which pair should be split and which should be kept together for 10 more minutes until a door is cleared. He comments in short words. He listens in long silence. When he says now, the work happens now. There is leadership in his breath. It is not a speech. It is a steady meter that other lungs start to match. At the ministry, when politics became a maze and titles started to mean less than they once did, he did not trade principle for access. He kept a straight line between the duty and the person who needed it done. Later, when the ministry fell to darkness and names on paper were used like nooses, he did not slump into a chair and complain while the light went out. He moved in the dark as if it were a hallway he had trained for all his life. Quiet, precise, unafraid to say no when no was the hard right word. In open battle, his presence becomes a kind of field. Others set their feet better because he is there. You can picture him on a staircase in the castle while the night outside shakes and the stone complains under force. He is not shouting. He is placing shield, stun, step. You two, left, hold. Now, a door opens because he told someone to kick it, not because he wanted to be the one to kick it. An enemy falls because he timed a simple strike between an ally's breath out and breath in. There are bright wizards who light the sky. Kingsley is the one who makes sure the sky light lands where it should. He carries a Patronus that is clean and strong and arrives like a decision already made. It is not a boast. It is the simple shape of a memory that does not blur when the world tries to make it blur. It moves through cold air and makes a corridor where there was none. In grim hours, it is hard to overstate what a clear Patronus does for a crowd that is near panic. The mind steadies. The hand warms. People remember that hope is not a theory. It is a tool. He reminds them without words. When the long night ended, he did not trade his wand for a banner and a parade. Work remained. Walls to rebuild, rooms to clear of old fear. policy to untangle so that good people would not be crushed by the leftover weight of bad rules. He stood where he was most useful and did the work with the same economy of motion he showed in alleys and on staircases. In a time of speeches, he stayed practical. In a time of noise, he stayed clear. That clarity is a kind of power that holds a country steady after the shouting is over. Limits belong in the ledger. Kingsley is not an inventor of new magic. He did not write spells that reframe the discipline. He did not carry ancient relics that bend the odds by themselves. His power is not the brutal reality-bending thrust you will find higher on this list. He does not crush a field by himself. He does not move mountains with a thought. He would tell you that mountains do not need moving most days, that the path around them will do, if drawn with care and walked with others. That view keeps him from the highest ranks where scale and myth sit together, but it does not dim the value of what he is. It clarifies it. There is a different kind of ceiling, and he knows it. Leadership can be mistaken for power, even when the wand work behind it is the true engine. He never makes that mistake about himself. He keeps score where it belongs. Did the child get home? Did the squad come back? Did the law protect who it promised to protect? Did the harm stop here? In that sense, his magic is moral geometry, lines and angles chosen to make a shape that shelters the many without losing the one standing at the edge. Picture him at a window before a mission. He watches the street below and does nothing for a long minute. Doing nothing is, in that minute, the spell. It lets the noise in the mind fall into order. It lets the first plan get replaced by the better plan that follows the breath. He sets his hat on his head like a small oath. He checks his wand once, not because he doubts it, but because ritual is the hinge between thought and action. He turns from the glass. The room straightens as if a string has been pulled somewhere above the doorframe. No dramatics, just the quiet sense that now is the time. His colleagues trust him with their blind spots. That is not a small magic. It is built from 1,000 honest acts, done with no need for credit. He gives it back in the way he covers them when they move, in the way he stands slightly forward of danger without stepping into vanity, in the way he absorbs panic and returns calm. The young watch him and unconsciously mirror his small habits. The way he lowers a wand as soon as it is safe. The way he speaks to a shopkeeper after a raid as if the shop were a living thing that needs to be reassured. The way he thanks the clerk who stayed late to find an old file. Respect keeps a society from fraying. He maintains that spell every day. There are victories he could brag about that he will never mention. There are narrow escapes where he chose not to chase another inch of glory, because chasing it would have risked someone else's inch of life. That choice often goes unseen. It is still power. Self-control is not a soft skill when the world invites you to be loud. It is a hard edge that keeps mistakes small and reversible. It is a habit that prevents the kind of harm no wand can fix afterward. We set Kingsley here at 16 because the list must be honest about scale, invention and myth, but we also set him here with a warmth that belongs to guardians who seldom get songs. If you had to choose one wizard to run point on a mission that could not afford a single wrong turn, you would be wise to choose him. If you had to choose one voice to carry across a hall and turn confusion into motion, you would be wise to choose him. If you had to choose one pair of eyes to watch a door while you closed yours for a few minutes and rested, you would be wise, perhaps safest of all, to choose him. There are voices that make a classroom feel like a small harbor, and Remus Lupin had one of those. It did not rise to command attention. It invited it. The words came measured, the pauses honest, and the explanations clear enough to set a restless mind down like a cup on a steady table. He entered rooms as if he were apologizing to the dust for stirring it, yet there was a quiet order that followed din, a tidiness of thought that made even frightening subjects feel manageable. This is his first kind of power. He could take the unknown and make it hold still. In a world where fear spreads quickly, that is no small magic. His spellwork matched the voice clean, spare, exact. When he defended students, he did not waste light. A shield from him arrived like a door closing softly, but completely. A counter curse left his wand with the neatness of handwriting you could copy. He did not decorate results, he delivered them. That simplicity was not lack of force, it was proof of control. There is a difference between a bright crack in the air and a spell that hits the exact hinge of a problem and removes it. Lupin preferred hinges. He had a gift for teaching defensive magic that felt like a map instead of a list. He showed how one movement leads to the next, how a posture frees a second option, how a simple charm, if placed early, prevents the need for a complicated solution later. He understood that panic ruins recall, so he built habits that survive inside panic. He laughed when the moment needed light. He went quiet when the room needed to hear itself think. Students left his lessons with a sense that they could do hard things without becoming hard themselves. That is a second kind of power. The ability to multiply competence in other people. Kindness in him was not soft ground. It was chosen structure. He offered chocolate after shocks, not as a trick, but as a signal that small repairs matter. He called shy hands forward and gave them something they could do immediately, so they would feel a first success instead of a second failure. He praised precision, not volume. He corrected without bruising. He never made a show of what he knew. This discipline of care is easy to overlook because it does not throw sparks. But ask anyone who has been steadied by a calm, attentive teacher in a frightening year. There are spells we remember for the rest of our lives, and not all of them have Latin names. There was courage, too, the kind that does not announce itself in corridors. He carried a private weight that took strength just to lift each morning. He organized his life around safeguards, around calendars that mattered, around an honesty with himself that is rarer than any famous charm. He did not pretend his condition was nothing. He did not use it as an excuse either. He built routines that protected other people first, and then himself. This practical compassion, the willingness to do quiet, inconvenient work so others need not suffer, is power measured not in yards of light but in the absence of harm. Many will never know what did not happen because he prepared. That is often how the most disciplined magic shows up, as a non-event. On the field, when duty called him out of the classroom, he fought the way he taught, aware of lines, saving breath, making space for others to act. He did not chase the spectacular solution when a smaller one would end the danger sooner. He preferred to end a fight by removing the one element that made it dangerous rather than trading grand spells until exhaustion decided the matter. There are scenes where his shield became a temporary roof under which younger wands gathered themselves before stepping back out. There are moments when his counter-curse arrived one heartbeat earlier than panic required, and a friend who would have fallen did not. The story of Remus Lupin in battle is the story of a man who could turn 3 desperate seconds into time enough. He was honest about limits. He knew the edge of his strength and did not make a performance of stepping beyond it for applause. He could flinch away from hope when the future asked for more from him than he believed he deserved. This is part of his truth and belongs here. Yet even in that hesitation, there was a hard core of responsibility that never went missing. When children needed protection, he moved. When friends needed a line held, he stood. When night was the price of safety, he paid it. He simply did not trade honesty for the thrill of being seen. That restraint kept him effective and kept those around him safer than they realized in the moment. Look closely at how he used words. He did not waste them. He did not speak to win or to perform. He spoke to place a thought where it would do the most good. After a student stumbled, he would name the small part that worked and build from that point rather than from the error. After a friend grew sharp with fear, he would let the sharpness pass through him without throwing it back. After a meeting began to knot itself with theories and worry, he would ask a question that quietly sorted what was known from what was guessed. This patience with truth is a third kind of power. In dangerous times, clarity is a shield. There is also the power of example. Young people in his care saw a man who refused to let a difficult life become an excuse for unkindness. They saw someone who needed help sometimes and accepted it without turning help into debt. They saw someone who could be brave while still being tired, who could be brave while still being gentle. These examples change futures in subtle ways. They echo in how those students, years later, speak to their own children, lead their own teams, keep their own promises when the night is long. A powerful wizard can win a battle. A powerful teacher can prevent. His place on this list acknowledges ceilings. He did not bend the academic branches of magic into new shapes. He did not carry artifacts that tilt history. He is not placed here for mythic scale or for a single duel that became a legend told over 100 tables. He is placed here for mastery of essentials, for consistency under pressure, for the way he turned fear into something teachable, and for the practical courage of living carefully for the sake of others. In a ledger that counts real outcomes, these points are not sentimental, they are weight. Picture him at dusk in a quiet classroom after the chairs have been stacked. He stands by an open window, marking where the sky fades from blue to the first suggestion of night. His coat is over the back of a chair. His wand is on the desk beside a stack of essays, one of them folded because it was honest and clumsy and brave. He reads the folded one last. He writes 2 sentences that will become a voice in that student's mind when fear tries to speak louder. He closes the ink. He looks out again, and you can feel the measured breath he takes before turning off the lamps. He leaves the room better than he found it. That is a habit with him. If you measure power only by the force a man can throw across a hall, you will miss Remus Lupin. If you measure it by the lives that remained whole because he was there, by the number of children who learned to trust their hands, by the friends who found themselves standing in a space he made for them in a frightening moment, he grows very tall. He is not a blaze. He is banked fire that keeps a house warm through long weather. The older you get, the more you value that kind of heat. So we place him here at 15 with gratitude for what is lasting and modest and hard to counterfeit. We note the limits because fairness requires it. We let the fuller parts stand. A quiet, exact wizard who made others stronger, who fought when he had to, who refused to let difficulty turn him cruel, who lived inside the kind of discipline that protects strangers. Breathe in. Let the breath go. Let the image of a tidy desk and an open window close itself. Ahead waits a different brightness, a master of charms whose precision can split a hair at speed. A small figure with a jewel resume that would humble louder names. A teacher whose classroom levitated not with panic but with perfectly placed intent. When you are ready, we will step toward Phileas Flitwick and see how delight and lethal exactness can share the same wand hand. What happens when delight and precision share the same wand hand? A small figure steps onto a dueling floor, and the room forgets to breathe for a moment. The first spell leaves hardly any light in the air, yet the effect is exact and complete. A ribbon lifts, a blade disarms, a shield blossoms, and then is gone like a held note. It looks simple because he has done the hard parts long before the duel began. We continue in the same calm style and structure. Flitwick carries the kind of mastery that makes classrooms feel bright and safe. He smiles when a charm takes hold, and the smile is honest, because craft gives him joy. He speaks with lightness, but the lessons stack like careful bricks. Grip, pause, intention. A charm is not only the word and the swing, it is the thought shaped to a point. Students leave with that point in their hands, and many never lose it. On a field, he wastes nothing. His shields land early and vanish as soon as they have done their work. His stuns take the shortest path through the air and arrive without a ripple of panic. He knows how to turn one small charm into 3 seconds of space for a friend, and 3 seconds can be the difference between a retreat and a fall. He will not choose a larger spell when a smaller one will do. He understands that neat work saves breath, and breath saves lives. He has a quiet history with the jewel itself. In younger days, his name on a list made other names read it twice. He fought with timing, not with heat, and he won with angles that left crowds puzzled until the replay in the mind caught up to what happened. A wrist turns a fraction, and a wand is no longer where an enemy thought it was. A heel slides half an inch, and a beam passes through air that used to hold a chest. He builds these fractions into whole outcomes. The result is control that feels almost unfair because it looks so calm. Castle walls remember him. When darkness gathered and the old stone needed voices, he spoke to suits of armor, and they rose like a quiet army. Lords were tuned like instruments until they hummed in agreement, and that hum made a buffer against the night. He walked stairs with a wand held low and gave orders that were short and kind. Doors were opened that needed opening, and doors were sealed that had to remain shut. This is power as stewardship. It does not shout. It holds. Charms have a reputation for sparkle, yet in his hands they are structure. He builds balance into rooms. He adds light where fear would have taken it away. He removes a hazard with the neat pluck of a string that no one else heard. He loves the elegant solution, the spell that does only what is needed and nothing more. He loves it because it respects the world. It also keeps him fast when the ground tilts. An elegant habit makes a steady wizard when the weather turns. There is a teacher in every movement. He cannot help it, and it serves him well. Even in the middle of a hard hour, he is still modeling the right economy of motion. Younger ones near him tend to settle because they understand what to imitate. He gives them one clear instruction, and the instruction fits the moment like a key. He gives them one clear praise, and the praise lands on the exact thing that will happen again if they keep breathing. It is leadership by example, and it spreads through a corridor the way warm air does. Limits belong in the ledger, and we write them with the same care. Flitwick is not a breaker of magical ceilings in the way that inventors are. He did not reshape the map of magic with new branches that change how the whole world works. He does not carry artifacts that move the balance by themselves. His power is focus and consistency at the edge of perfection, not scale that cracks mountains. That honest frame keeps him at 14. It does not dim the light of what he is. Think of him at a desk after class when the last feather has fallen. He pinches a bit of dust between 2 fingers and flicks it into a tidy arc toward a bin that is already clean. He hums something small and the window opens just enough to let the room breathe. He writes 3 words on a parchment and underlines one that matters. Then he places his wand flat on the wood for a second, as if to remind it that work can rest. The whole scene is a charm in the shape of a day. In a duel, his body tells a story of respect. He bows in a way that feels like a promise. He meets the first spell as if it were a question to be solved, not an insult to be avenged. He never presses for a flourish that would please a crowd at the cost of control. If a young opponent tries to prove something with noise, he lets the noise pass and places a small answer in the right place. When the bout ends, he looks almost sorry that it had to be a bout at all. That is the feeling of a master who loves the craft above the win. What many forget is how much courage it takes to keep joy alive in hard times. Flitwick never let fear make him severe. He never let anger write his lessons. He built a department that felt like a harbor, and in the worst year on record, the harbor held students who could not bear one more hour of grimness, found a room where a charm could still float a teacup, and for a minute the world made sense again. That minute gave them strength for the next corridor. That minute is not small, not when taken at scale. His record in defense of the castle is not a list of loud victories. It is a chain of exact choices that kept others alive. He picked targets that removed pressure from weak points. He placed barriers that absorbed momentum. Without breaking corridors clear where panicked feet needed clean lines. He defended not as a lone blaze, but as a conductor arranging a whole space to survive. If you have ever watched a teacher catch a falling object without looking up from a sentence, you have seen the root of this power. We set him here, and we do it with a kind of quiet admiration that suits him. He is the person you want within 10 feet when things start to tilt, because he will fix one small thing after another, until the tilt is gone. He is the person who can turn a classroom into a seed of courage that germinates years later. He is the person whose spells do not waste your nerves. Many heroes fill stories. Few make the room feel better simply by lifting a wand the way he does. The air tightens when her name enters a room. Conversation thins. Laughter goes flat. Bellatrix Lestrange does that. Not with grandeur, with pressure, with the feeling that something sharp has just been set on the table and no one wants to touch it. Her power is attack, pure, fast, unkind. She moves forward when most people brace. She does not search for perfect angles. She forces them. The first spell is heavy. The second is heavier. The third arrives before you finish thinking of a shield. She is stamina in a dress that never sits still. She is a grin where a pause should be. She is a duelist who feeds on a room's fear until the room belongs to her. Her control of dark curses is exact. Not clever in the way of books. Exact in the way of repetition. She has practiced what others only threaten. The line between intention and effect is short when she casts. It is not only the unforgivable set, it is the fast braid of lesser hexes that clear a path for the worst one. A stumble, a burn on the wrist, a snap of light that tears a shield so the next beam will matter. She builds that sequence with instinct more than thought. It works because her nerve never stalls. She is also a hunter of confidence. She talks while she fights. She laughs when a plan breaks. She tilts her head and invites anger closer. She wants you to spend yourself trying to make her quiet. She will trade ground for tempo. She will let you step forward if it makes your aim greedy. Many fell into that rhythm. Few came back steady. In set pieces, her record is hard to ignore. She broke lines that should not have bent. She cut through trained groups by leaning on speed, on pressure, and on the way panic multiplies in crowds. She crossed halls where the air itself seemed to flinch. She treated wards like cobweb and made them cobweb. She carried the night for her side more than once by being the point that never dulled. There is a cost built into that style. It is the same cost that visits any edge used without rest. She trusts attack so much that she forgets what defense can do. Her shields come late or thin. Her counters arrive as taunts rather than solutions. Against calm mastery, she overreaches. She seeks the finish when the move is to wait. She wants the moment to crack now. That need is a flaw. It widens under pressure. She is not a planner of battles. She is a blade you point at a problem and then you step away. She does not love command. She loves the rush of the next cast. When the field tilts and asks for a change in rhythm, she is slower to change than her speed suggests. She will press when she should pivot. She will chase a single foe when the room needs to be managed. That is how her power escapes the shape that would make it larger. Her mind is a furnace. It gives heat. It also eats fuel fast. She does not manage her own fire. She lets it run. That makes her terrible to face. For a minute, for 2 minutes, for 3. Past that, the duel becomes a study in whether her opponent can stay whole while the storm spends itself. Against most, it never reaches that point. Against rare steadiness, the truth appears. Fury is not the same as control. Pressure is not the same as inevitability. There is also the record of her worst acts. We will not dwell. We will only say the ledger marks them. They prove nerve. They prove skill in the cruelest sense. They do not prove greatness. They prove that a wand can be used to tear as well as to shape. Power defined only as the ability to harm is small. It looks big when it screams. It shrinks when you measure what remains after the noise. Technique matters. Even in darkness, there is technique. She turns wrists in tight circles that keep beams straight and fast. She shortens her steps so she can break and start without losing balance. She changes height by half a head to make your aim wrong. She hammers the same spot on a shield rather than painting it. These are the simple stones of her craft. Learn them and you survive her longer. Fail them and the hallway goes quiet. Her presence also changes allies. Some fight better near her because fear sharpens them. Some fight worse because fear burns them. She does not build the team around her. She bends it. She does not hold space for others to work. She takes space and asks others to keep. In the early minutes of a raid, this can feel like momentum. In the late minutes, it can feel like a gap where a steady hand should be. Why 13? Because the list must be honest about ceiling. She is not a scholar who shifted the frame of magic. She is not a builder of wards that hold cities. She is not a general who can turn a map with a finger. She is not a bearer of a relic that multiplies the self. She is force, concentrated, immediate, ferocious. She breaks most things she touches. She loses to hands that can keep breathing while she swings. There is a moment worth studying. A duel where her taunts met her mother's steady rage and a lifetime of quiet practice. She pressed. She laughed. She tried to draw a mistake. She received a single, exact answer. Not flash, not theater, just an end. That is the lesson at this rank. Unchecked attack teaches your enemy how to find you. If they live long enough to learn, they will. Imagine her in a long corridor before a fight. She does not check lines. She does not polish plans. She rolls her shoulders and tastes the air like a storm animal. Her wand rests in her palm as if it were the only honest thing she has ever. She hums, a tune that sounds like mockery and memory at the same time. When the door opens, she goes first. The floor seems to tip toward her. For a while, the corridor is only. Now let the picture slow. Let the echo of her laugh fade from the stone. We can acknowledge the power without admiring the hunger. We can mark the danger without copying the method. We can learn the small, exact moves that make a defense last against a rush. We can write her name where it belongs. belongs, not in the top tier where power guides the world. Here, where power overwhelms a room and then runs into the wall built by patience. What looks like silence can be a shield. What looks like cold can be control. Tonight we open a narrow door and stand in the calm behind it. The air is still. The desk is neat. The quill is set at a slight angle, as if the hand that used it never wasted motion. This is where power chooses to be quiet. This is where Severus Snape keeps his weather. His magic begins with attention. He listens to a room the way a Potania listens to a simmer. He notices what others rush past. A tremor in a wand hand. A word spoken a half-breath early. A habit that gives away intent. Then he acts with the smallest piece that will move the whole matter. A flick, a whisper. A correction that arrives so cleanly it looks like nothing at all. That is why his duels feel strange to watch. You wait for a storm. He gives you a hinge. The door swings. The fight is over. He writes spells, the way a good brewer writes notes. In tidy lines that record the exact place where a result became possible. He trims motions. He changes a vowel. He adds a counter no one saw the need for until he places it in the right minute, and a danger falls quiet. This is invention without theater. It is craft that shows up as absence. The harm that did not land. The shield that did not have to be raised. The panic that did not get a first step. A mind like this is a ward around a school even when the caster is walking down a hall with his hands behind his back. His classroom is a forge of control. He is not kind in tone. He is exact in effect. He makes a student hold a cut steady. He makes a measure honest. He makes a flame low when low is correct, even if the room wants brightness. This can feel harsh. It is also mercy. Sloppy work in this branch of magic turns small mistakes into large ones. His severity is a net with a fine weave. It catches what would slide through anywhere else. Many who thought they hated him later know that those habits became their safety in a life that contained more heat than they had expected. He carries the mind arts like a second skin. Walls in, windows out. He reads what he must. He blocks what he must. He lives inside a discipline that most cannot hold for a day without cracking. He holds it for years. Double work, double watch, 2 sets of eyes on his hours, and a third inside his own head. To do this and remain precise at a wand is not ordinary strength. It is a kind of athletic balance in thought. Few have it, fewer keep it this long. His potion craft is not only bottles and recipes, it is a way of thinking that he applies everywhere. He breaks a problem into stages. He builds a sequence that never rushes the early step in a chase for the bright end. In the lab, this gives you clean cure. At a table with enemies, it gives you time. Time is the most expensive ingredient. He buys it with patience and with a face that tells you nothing, and because you see nothing, you waste yours. That is the quiet win inside many of his scenes. The other person spends. He saves. Study how he uses space. He seldom stands in the center. He chooses a place that gives him 2 routes. He angles his body to narrow the lane an enemy thinks is wide. He makes a classroom feel larger for the students and smaller for a threat. In a corridor where fear is heavy, he removes weight by moving as if the corridor belonged to him already. That confidence is not bluff. It comes from years of finishing motions that other people only start. It is the opposite of show. It is the steadiness that makes every next choice easier. There are flashes of attack in him, and when they arrive, they are sharp. He does not build a stack of light to prove a point. He sends the one thing that ends the point. A wand leaves a hand. A curse loses its path. A shield that was about to fail is never asked to. If you have ever watched a master pluck a single string and hear a whole chord settle, you have the right picture, not loud. Correct. Much about him asks for softer words. The life he lived was not simple. The days were not gentle. We keep to the rules and to the tone, and so we say this. He bore a long duty that asked him to stand where almost no one could stand, between wrong and wrong, between a mask and a promise. He did not speak to ask for thanks. He built a wall inside himself and kept the wind off those who would never know they had been given shelter. This is a heavy sentence to write. It belongs on the page because weight carried in secret is still weight, and the carrying is still power. Limits keep the ledger honest. He was not the symbol who moved nations with a name. He did not carry artifacts that turn rooms into easy answers. He chose a smaller circle and held it with more care than it looked like at first glance. He did not invite people into his method. He did not spread warmth. That cost him allies he might have had. That cost him love he did not think he deserved, even when love stood within reach. In war, the cold style protects results. In peace, the same style can leave a house empty. That is part of the truth here, and it shapes his place on the list. The image that remains is not only of a dark coat and a still face. It is of margin notes in a narrow hand. It is of a quiet adjustment that yields a cleaner brew. It is of a corridor where a danger passes like a draft, and somehow no child is hurt. It is of a private room at the end of a private day, where he sits very straight in a chair and allows himself 1 minute with his eyes closed. Not to sleep, to put the pieces of the next hour in order so that no one else will have to. There is also the student in every room with him, the one who thinks precision is cruelty, the one who thinks attention is dislike, the one who thinks the teacher wants them to fail. Many years later, that student makes a nice cut without thinking, and a hard task becomes safe. They will not remember to thank anyone. They will not trace the motion back to a cold voice that would not let sloppy work pass. But the safety is real. It travels down years and out of sight. This is a quiet legacy. It is also a deep one. Think of a night patrol through stone. Boots sound like soft clicks on old steps. Torches notice him and burn a little steadier. A portrait pretends to sleep and does not fool him. He moves the way a seasoned brewer stirs, in circles that return to key points on time. He pauses at a door, because pausing now will avoid an argument later. He adjusts a ward with a touch. He continues. When dawn comes, everything looks ordinary. That is his favorite outcome. It looks like nothing happened. Everything happened. Why 12? Because this list counts scale as well as skill. Above him stand names who move armies and countries with a gesture, or who carry tools that turn them into storms. He is not a storm. He is the hand that makes sure the roof holds. He is the mind that ends a fight before the first loud spell is cast. He is invention that hides its own light and works for the result and not the applause. On most nights, that is the best magic a place can hope for. On the loudest night, it is the difference between a ruin and a school that will open its doors in the morning. Discipline can be a kind of light. It falls in clean lines. It turns noise into order. When Minerva McGonagall lifts her wand, that light appears. Not bright for show, bright for purpose. The room notices. The room behaves. Her magic speaks in transfiguration first. Matter listens to her. Stone remembers it can move. Wood remembers it can shield. A teacup remembers it can be a mouse. And then, when asked, It remembers how to be a teacup again without a crack. Control at that level is not a trick. It is years of exact thought. It is intent formed to a point and held steady through the swing and through the word and through the silence after. That steadiness is power. She is an animagus by choice, not by accident. A cat who understands corners. A cat who understands when to be seen and when to be scent and sound alone. To achieve that form, you must learn yourself until you can draw yourself like a map. You must know where fear lives and where patience lives, and ask both to share a skin. She did this as a young witch. She did it without asking for applause. Then she returned to human shape and used the lesson under every other spell. Know the form, respect the form, change the form only as much as the purpose requires. In class, she is precise. Not cruel, precise. A chair must be a pin, not a near pin, not a pin if you squint. A pin. She praises when the line is clean. She corrects when the line wanders. Her voice can cut a lazy habit in half. It can also catch a nervous hand and set it right without letting the whole row see. Students learn that excellence is the safest place to stand. They learn that careful work is kind work because it protects everyone in the room. This is power that multiplies. 100 careful hands leave a castle safer than one famous wand ever could. On a field she is command. She does not need to shout. She places you three there, shields high. Now, her timing makes other people braver. She sees the whole staircase, while most see a single step. When the last night came, she woke the castle like a housekeeper who knew every hinge. Armor stood at attention, statues bowed and marched. Corridors took their roles like actors who had rehearsed. The building itself fought because she asked it to, and because she knew how to ask without breaking what she loved. Her dual craft is exact. You can watch a brief corridor of light with Severus Snape and see what clean intention means under pressure. No flailing, no waste. A volley that knows its width, a counter that knows the narrowest path through air. She is not a brawler. She is a mathematician whose formula happened to take the shape of spells. In the seconds that most used to think, she is already subtracting a danger and dividing a crowd and adding a line of protection that will keep 2 children alive behind a balustrade no one else noticed. Minerva's leadership is a spell that few learn. She can be stern without being unkind. She can be kind without losing the edge that keeps rules from becoming suggestions. Young witches and wizards lean toward the path she draws because the path is clear. They do not always like it. They often thank her later. In years when the school shook, her presence was gravity. It kept orbits. It kept the daily things moving, meals at hours, lessons that met and finished, corridors that stayed safe because safety was still the rule even when fear asked to be the rule instead. She understands scale. Not every problem needs a storm. Some need a change of shape at the exact point of stress. A banister becomes a barrier. A set of desks becomes a lattice that will tangle 3 rushing feet. A flock of small birds becomes a sudden curtain that buys 4 seconds for a wounded child to stand. These moves look like nothing when written. They feel like survival when lived. She thinks in these terms by habit. Habit is a spell you live inside. She built a good one. There is warmth in her that she does not advertise. It appears in small rescues, the schedule rearranged without a speech, a punishment shaped to teach and then end, a letter written at midnight to a parent who is more frightened than angry, a hand on a shoulder that lasts the exact right number of seconds. Authority can be cold, hers is not. It is human on purpose. That choice gives her magic an extra inch of reach when crowds are tired and rules alone will not hold. We keep the ledger honest. Limits belong here. She is not the inventor who redraws the branches of magic for a century. She is not the storm that shatters armies in a single gesture. She does not carry an elder relic that multiplies the self beyond normal limits. She is a master of a grand art and a commander of a grand place. That keeps her at 11. It also means something clean. When the myth and the artifact are stripped away, her strength remains. Some at the top are taller because of tools. She is tall because of work. She chose institution over legend. That is a path that eats years. It also shelters thousands of days that would have gone wrong without the right head at the right table. The Great Hall stays the Great Hall. The timetables roll on as if time itself respected her quill. The owls find their roots, the portraits comply. The squads patrol, the school lives. That continuing life is the quietest measure of her power and the most persuasive one. A place that endures is a victory that never needs a statue. Watch her at dawn. She stands at a high window with a mug cooling in the hand that is not her wand hand. The grounds are gray with the late hour before morning. She notes a ripple on the lake. She notes the way mist sits on the grass. She notes a silhouette that means a child has risen early for the wrong reason. She does not ring bells. She does not call a meeting. She turns, sets the mug down on a ledger that has no errors, and goes to intercept a small trouble before it becomes a large one. Prevention is not dramatic. It is a better spell than cure. In the last battle, she was not a symbol for speeches. She was a line that would not break. She raised wards that stacked like plates and broke momentum. She sent help at the right moments, and not a moment before, so that help arrived while it still mattered. She fought to keep the school a school, while it was forced to be a fortress. When dawn came, stone still stood where she had placed it. Children still breathed where she had calculated they would need to. That is the arithmetic of power in real hours. Her students carry her in their hands for years. The way they hold a wand with the wrist low to save strain. The way they look at a problem from two angles before choosing. The way they do not let a near miss pass as a success. The way they insist on the exact word. These habits reach far beyond transfiguration. They are civic habits. They keep jobs safe. They keep families calmer. They stop small fires. She taught them as if she were teaching spells. She was teaching a way to be a person who will not create unnecessary harm. Why 11? Because above her stand figures who bend continents of consequence, who wear time like a cloak, who carry engines that magnify intention to a terrifying scale. She does not need that scale to matter. Her radius is a school, and the places that school touches, within that radius, she is final. If you drew power, not as height, but as reliability over time, her graph would be a straight, high line. In a world that survives only if certain lines hold, that is an apex of its own kind. Raw force can arrive before a person is ready to hold it. When that happens, the room changes shape. Walls forget their lines. Air thickens. Light trembles in place as if it no longer trusts itself. This is the feeling around Credence, barebone. He does not summon a storm. He is the storm when the storm can find no sky wide enough. An obscurial is not a spell. It is a breaking point made visible. Magic pushed down so hard and so long that it learns to live without permission. Then, when fear or pain or a sudden corner presses again, it comes out like night falling in one breath. That is why Credence stands here, not for polish, for scale, for the terrible reach of power that moves whether a wand is raised or not. He does not duel in the usual sense. There is no posture, no elegant sequence of counters and lines. There is a release. Streets tear, rooms fold. Stone loses its memory of being stone. What stands in the way is not pushed aside so much as erased from the map for a moment and then left to decide whether it can remember itself. Few alive can meet that output with a shield and remain upright. Fewer can do it twice. Control arrives late, sometimes not at all. That is the measure that keeps him at 10. Power is more than amplitude. It is also the line you draw with it. Credence struggles to draw lines. He reaches for shape and the shape dissolves in his hands. He tries to turn and the turn becomes a rush that carries him through a place instead of around it. He learns in flashes. He forgets in fear. The ledger honors the force and names the gap. Even in the chaos, there are moments of focus. A face he trusts. A voice that lowers the wave. A fragment of calm that holds for a breath or two and lets him choose rather than react. Those seconds matter. They prove there is a mind inside the cloud and a will that wishes to. When guidance is kind and patience is real, the storm edges soften, pathways emerge. He is not a curse, he is a person inside a curse-shaped circumstance. Those who sought to use him understood the scale even if they did not honor the person. They saw a liver long enough to move a city and tried to fit hands to it. Manipulation gave the obscurus more reasons to live angry. Promises came with hooks. Names were offered as keys and then turned like knives. It is important to write this gently. It is also important to write it. Much of the destruction around Credence was not born in him. It was coaxed, cornered, and then lit by people who wanted the light but not the life that carried it. When he is not pushed, a different picture appears. Quiet shoulders, eyes that look for permission and then for a way to be small. He moves like someone who has learned that even existing can be too loud. There is strength in the way he endures days like that without turning hard. There is a softness left in him that keeps choosing to believe new people might be different. Many would call that naivety. In truth, it is resilience of a rare kind. It is the stubborn belief that gentleness might still be possible for him. Technically, the obscurus behaves like a tide that can surge on the turn of a feeling. It finds cracks, it fills them, it travels along edges of anger and shame and sudden startle. Shields shiver because they are built to meet lines, not clouds. Counter curses fail because they assume a single point of contact. The best responses are not always magical in the first second. Space. Voice. A hand held low and empty. Then the right ward, shaped to contain without crushing. Then a path out that does not feel like a trap. It is hard work to stand near such force and remain kind. Those who managed it found that kindness is, itself, a form of control. Limits. We must write them clearly. Credence cannot be trusted with fine operations. He cannot hold a corridor with allies at his back and enemies at his front without risk to both. He cannot promise precision under stress. He struggles to keep himself intact when fear spikes. He is not an inventor. He is not a commander. He is not an artist of spellcraft. He is a proof of what magic can be when the person who owns it has been taught to doubt they own anything at all. And yet, the ledger must also hold hope where it is true. There are traces of learning, small choices made on hard days, a breath taken before the wave, a step back instead of forward. The beginning of control is often a pause. He finds that pause more often as he meets hands that do not use him. He begins to name himself without flinching at the sound. Identity is a kind of wand. Without it, power ricochets. With it, power can be asked to listen. Picture him in a quiet room where the lamp is warm and the chair is plain. He holds a wand as if it were a bird that might spook. Someone he trusts sits across from him and says very little. They wait. He breathes, and the furniture does not tremble. He tries a simple light, and it is simple. He tries to put it away, and it goes away. He looks surprised every time it works. Surprise is a soft thing on his face. It is also the first honest foundation for the kind of control he needs most. Why tin? Because the scale cannot be ignored. Few names in any era have carried so much raw power in so fragile a frame. Because the ceiling is real. Without consistent control, power is not leadership. Without sustainable shape, power is not safety. The list honors both truths at once: height and hazard, reach and risk. He stands where the numbers cross. Clarity can feel like wind over water. It smooths the surface. It lets the bottom come into view. When people spoke of Rowena Ravenclaw, they spoke of that feeling. Rooms grew sharper around her. Problems that looked like thorns arranged themselves into lines. A spell is at heart, a thought made precise. She lived in that precision. She taught it. She left it behind like a map others could follow without getting lost. Her magic begins where most magic hopes to end, with understanding. She did not chase spectacle. She chased the structure underneath it. She would look at a charm that threw light and ask what the light meant, where it touched, how it could be shaped to reveal what the eye missed rather than simply to shine. She would look at a ward and ask which idea it defended, and whether a kinder, cleaner defense would hold longer, with less harm. This habit turns talent into architecture. It is why her work endures. You can see that habit in the way she founded a school. A place can be a spell if built with care. She drew corridors like sentences. She set rooms to listen to the right kind of footsteps. She chose high places for thinking and low, warm places for learning to hold steady in the body. Windows were not ornaments to her. They were angles for light to enter at hours when young minds are most able to see detail. Stairs that move can be a game. In her hands they were also a lesson. The world shifts. Patterns recur. Watch. Adapt. Hold your center. Continue. Her students learn to love the work of the mind as much as the glow of the wand. She taught them to test claims, to check a result twice before calling it real, to prefer elegance over force when elegance could do the same job with fewer cracks. She made questions feel like keys instead of accusations. In her classrooms, being wrong was not a shame if it led to a cleaner right. This dissolves fear. Fear wastes power. She saved generations from that waste. There is the matter of her diadem. A circle of wrought thought. A tool that sharpened what was already clear. It did not gift cleverness where none lived. It amplified. It drew a line finer. It turned a good edge keener without changing the nature of the blade. Artifacts of this kind tempt pride. She wore it as one wears lenses for reading, to see better, so that she could teach better, build better, understand better. The object did not make her. It was made in her image, and that is the more honest measure of its worth. Rowena's spellcraft appears quiet from a distance. Up close, it is exact. She specialized in magic that reveals, organizes, and refines. Charms that sort and select without damaging what they touch. Wards that refuse malice but allow curiosity to pass. Devices that hold memory without warping it, so that a story told tomorrow matches the one told today. In a world where rumor can ruin safety as quickly as a curse can, this devotion to accuracy is not academic fussing. It is protection. She approached transfiguration like grammar. Know the rules. Know why they are rules. Know when a gentle exception makes the sentence sing, and when an exception will collapse the meaning of the whole. A teapot to a bird is charming if the teapot remembers itself afterward. It is a sin against craft if the teapot forgets. She asked students to place their intention on the form, as if their mind were a pair of careful hands, shaping without tearing. Many learned from her that restraint is not weakness. It is the highest form of control. Leadership in her was quiet gravity. She did not command the way a general commands. She arranged, she persuaded. She built a culture where the well-placed idea won more often than the loud one. You can feel the strength of that choice in the way her house would carry itself later. Curious, exact, sometimes proud to a fault. Always aware that respect for truth keeps you from walking off cliffs that feel like mountains when you are excited. She modeled that respect. She set it into the stone. Pride is the shadow of clarity. When you see well, you can forget that others do not see what you see yet. If a flaw lived in her, it lived here. A tendency to assume that a cleaner argument would always be enough, that a better diagram would heal the fear in a room, that reason bright and patient could conquer the old tides that live in people and make them stubborn. She was not naive. She was hopeful. Hope sometimes cost her time with those who needed a warmer route into the same truth. Even her shadow is a kind of light because it shows where the work remains for the kind teachers who came off. Why 9? Because the ledger counts scale, invention, and transmission. She did not raise armies. She did not stand on a hill and end a war with a lift of a relic. She did something rarer. She built a system that keeps working without her hand on it. She made knowledge travel cleanly across years. She invented with discipline and then taught the discipline itself, so that the next inventions would not depend on her breath. This multiplies power far beyond one lifetime. It makes a founder into a force. Picture her at a long table late at night, papers aligned, a candle trimmed so it will not sputter while she is thinking, a sketch of a ward that must allow mischief enough to teach, but stop harm enough to keep a child whole. She draws a curve. She erases the curve. She redraws with a smaller hand, then writes a short note in the margin. Let learning pass. The ward will respond to intent, not noise. Years from now, a prank will fizzle and a friendship will not. No one will thank the long-ago hand that chose intent sensing over blunt force. That is her favorite kind of result. Correct. Invisible. Kind. There are stories of her walking the grounds at dawn to feel how the buildings were breathing, listening to how a hallway took footsteps, adjusting a door that stuck, not with a carpenter's wedge, but with a spell that taught the door how to swing on a truth. Effort where effort belongs, ease where ease belongs. This is philosophy as maintenance. It preserves a place better than pride ever could. Pride wants plaque, she wanted function. The school remembers which wish mattered more. Her dueling, when needed, followed the same lines. She did not throw heat until the air boiled. She erased angles. She removed the move an opponent was counting on by changing the shape of the space around it. She shut down a spell by asking the rules that held it together to rest for a moment. The older you are, the more you admire this way of winning. The younger you are, the more you miss it because nothing exploded. The ledger does not miss it. It is the sort of mastery that saves a city with almost no sound. A last, simple truth belongs on her page. Intelligence can turn cruel if it forgets mercy. Her intelligence did not. She built a home for the mind that left room for the heart, a home where curiosity could wander without breaking the furniture, a home where rigor did not mean unkindness. That balance is rare. It is why her name lasts without help from rumor or fear. Creation without conscience can look like genius from far away. Up close it looks like a door left open in winter. The room grows cold. People wonder why. Purpo the fowl is a name made of that kind of wind. A mind of firsts. A hand that reached into places most only study. An inventor who asked questions that should be asked only with guards at every window. And a promise to stop when the answers start to cost more than they give. He worked in the deep parts of magic, the parts older than books, the parts that prefer caves to classrooms. He listened to snakes in a way that turned language into leverage. Parcel tongue in his mouth was not a curiosity. It was a tool. He took what he learned there and pressed it against the rules of life until the rules bent. A basilisk is what a snake becomes when a man like Herpo will not stop asking what if, and has no one standing behind him to say enough. The basilisk is an answer writ too large. Scale for the sake of scale. Venom that does not respect time. A gaze that turns breath into stone. It is impressive the way a cliff is impressive when you do not have a rope. It is the proof that understanding transformable essence does not make the user wise. His pride was in the outcome. The world paid the bill. This is the first measure of his power. He could move from concept to creature. He could make terror reproducible. He also pushed at death from the other side. A soul is not a potion to be thickened or thinned. It is not a knot to be cut and tied again. He looked at it and thought in recipes, ingredients, steps, a method to hide a self where hands cannot reach. The earliest notes of that method trace back to him. Horcrux lore does not live in tidy lines with his neat signature at the end. It moves like rumor through the centuries, because those who touch it do not write careful letters. But the old whispers point to his workshop. They carry the sound of a man telling himself that security is worth any price, as long as someone else pays it. This is power as invention. It is also power as subtraction. Remove the final limit. Remove the natural end. Remove the fear that keeps people from building monsters just because they can. When you take these breaks off, skill accelerates into the dark. Purpo proved how fast. His legacy is not a list of battles won. It is a shelf full of methods that later hands copied and polished until they could ruin a century. To invent a technique that survives you is a high form of might. To invent one that should have died with you is the curse side of that same coin. He did not fight like Bellatrix, burning hours to ash in bright lines. He fought like a scholar who already solved the room yesterday. He arrived with counters prepared and his own rules in his pocket. He preferred to make the field unsafe for anyone but himself. Inner wards that starved the air around shields, lures that called the wrong creature to the right place, subtle hexes that toppled a plan quietly so the defenders would not know which step had failed until they were on the ground. He liked edges. He liked the feeling of having found an angle the rest of the world had not found yet. That feeling can be a drug. It can turn a bright head into a closed loop. There is a discipline in him that cannot be denied. You do not make new branches of magic by accident. You do not hold a basilisk egg and survive long enough to write notes about it unless your rituals are exact. He measured, he recorded, he tested, he removed variables until the remaining variable was will. Then he pushed. The cold patience that lets a wizard wait a week for a single reaction to finish is the same patience that lets a wizard wait a decade for a plan to mature. He had that patience. It made him dangerous in a way loud bravery never will. His rooms would have been very clean. Not homely, clean. Instruments lined like arguments. Stones chalked with circles that meant something even when the chalk wore thin. Bowls that waited under cloth for a moment when temperature and moon agreed. Pages stacked with the neat fuss of a man who needs his thoughts to stay where he put them. In such places, the wrong idea can feel safe because everything else looks safe. This is one of the tricks dark research plays on the mind. Order becomes a disguise. Herpo wore that disguise well. Limit belongs on his page. He made. He did not shepherd. He did not protect. He did not build systems that keep children alive when the weather turns. He did not lead people through fog and put them down in the morning where bread is warm and roofs do not leak. His art travels. His care did not. Power that travels without care becomes harm when it meets weak hands or hungry hearts. Later names picked up his pieces and made them worse. He was a father to tools that hated their children. Why 8? Because the ledger counts origin. To be the root of techniques that echo for 1,000 years is to stand taller than those who simply master those techniques later. Because invention, even misused, is a rarer skill than aggression. Because a man who turns ideas into repeatable results changes the world more than 100 fast ones who leave no method behind. This rank is not applause, it is an honest measure of reach. We keep the tone gentle and the detail clean. We do not walk step by step through the worst of it. We do not teach the recipe by accident in the telling. We mark the shape, we mark the lesson. Intelligence without restraint is not wisdom. Curiosity without duty is not scholarship. Power without conscience is not strength. It is a cut in the fabric that others fall through. There is one more texture to write. Even the foul keep a kind of attention that students of the art can learn from without copying the aim. He respected detail. He accepted that nature will not yield if you hurry. He let patience do half his work. If you are going to live near the deep parts of magic, those habits save you. Keep them. Point them elsewhere. Build with them. Protect with them. Teach with them. Let the craft be the same while the purpose changes. That is how a culture heals from the harm a mind like his can spread. Picture him at a threshold just before dawn. The cave breathes a cold the sun has not warmed yet. He holds a lamp in the quiet way you hold something alive. A rustle speaks from a crack near his feet, and he understands the sentence even though it is only scale over stone. He answers. His voice is level. He steps inside, and the lamp goes from object to instrument. The day will end with notes and ash, with a diagram that looks too neat for what it describes, with a feeling of having won an argument with the world. The world will present its bill later. Others will pay it. We write his name and draw a line under it. We accept that his kind of power leaves a mark that good people spend lifetimes repairing. We accept that the making itself was formidable. We accept that measuring power sometimes means measuring harm potential because the world is what it is, not what we wish it to be. Then we close the book on this chapter and turn toward a different kind of strength altogether. From the dark engineer to the bright champion, from methods that burrow to a hand that meets the duel in full daylight. Ahead waits a founder who wore courage like a uniform and turned fairness into a fighting style. A wizard whose presence steadied friends and drew the best kind of fear from foes. When you are ready, we will step into the open ground of Godric Gryffindor and study how clean valor becomes a technique. Open ground. Cool air, boots that do not hurry, A man whose stance reads as invitation and warning at the same time. This is Godric Gryffindor. He does not hide his power. He sets it down where everyone can see it. Then he asks you to meet it fairly. Valor is not noise. Valor is choice. He made that choice until it became a habit. Step toward danger when others step back. Speak plain when others circle. Stand in the open, so lies have nowhere to hook. That habit shaped his magic. It made his casting clean. It made his timing honest. It made his duels look simple, even when they were not. He fought with the straightest line that would still win. Shields first. Feet right. Eyes calm. Then a strike that lands on the hinge of a fight and turns the whole door. He did not waste light. He did not chase theater. If a banishing charm could end it, he used the banishing charm. If a binding could save a life, he used the binding. A duel with him felt fair, until it didn't. You would think you were keeping pace. Then your next option would be gone, and you would not know when he took it. Transfiguration in his hand was not decoration. It was a tool for space and leverage. A column becomes cover. A flagstone becomes a low wall that steals an enemy's footing. A scattering of pebbles becomes a single step that lifts him out of a line of fire. Small moves, large effects. He liked moves that spare the room and save the people in it. In this he was a founder before he was a champion. He thought like someone building a school even when he was clearing a field. He wielded steel as easily as light. The sword he carried was more than metal. It was a ritual in the shape of a blade. Draw only for right reasons. Put away when the right reasons end. Sword in one hand, wand in the other, he made a style from balance, distance and close, spell and stroke, rhythm that could not be read because he would break it the second you learned it. He used the sword as punctuation, not as a crutch. The sentence was still his magic. Command followed him because his rules were clear. No ambush for glory. No harm that can be spared. No victory that turns you into what you beat. He held young fighters steady by standing where they could see him and by doing the same right things again and again. He reminded them that fear is a signal, not a master. Breathe. Set your feet. See the real target, not the loudest one. Then act. When a leader gives you that kind of map in the middle of a hard hour, your hands stop shaking. That is power multiplied through other bodies. He respected an enemy who stood up and fought clean. He despised an enemy who hid behind those who could not answer back. That respect showed in how he ended fights. He would offer a way out as long as a way out existed. When the door closed, his decisions grew exact. No cruelty, no glow. Finish the danger. Clear the ground. Move the living towards safety. This kept his people alive and kept his name from carrying stain. It is not easy to win and still be able to look your students in the eye. He did it, as a rule. Study his feet to understand his wand. He moved like a craftsman who knows weight. Hips square, steps small, center low when it needed to be. He took angles away by standing in the place that made your next line bad before you cast it. He made the field narrow for you and wide for himself. This is the quiet geometry of great dueling. It does not film as well as sparks. It wins more fights. There is warmth in him that history remembers as courage, because that is the public word for it. In private, the warmth looked like care. He saw the young, he saw the timid, he saw the ones who were brave in thought but slow in hand, and he found work that made them belong. Some guarded doors, some carried messages, some held torches so others could see. He made a house where different forms of bravery had room. That is not a slogan. It is culture as protection. It keeps the small from being crushed by the loud. His friendship made bridges. His temper made lines. With Salazar, he could argue like weather. Sharp, sudden, honest. The argument itself was proof of power. Two minds that large will strike sparks when the map of the world is at stake. Godric's side of the map favored openness over suspicion, merit over pedigree, trial by act over trial by blood. He insisted that fear should not draft laws. He insisted that schools should not become forts. He lost some of those arguments. He won others. The school kept both tempers in its stones. That is why it lives. It learned to breathe with two lungs. Limits belong on the page. He did not love subtle webs. He did not love long games that ask for patience beyond the horizon of a season. Others drew wards that slept for a year and woke at the right hour. Others hid traps inside tapestries and treaties. He preferred the door you can see and the lock you can fix with your hands. That preference kept him honest. It also left places for quieter minds to cover. He was not a scholar who wrote new branches of magic. He was not an inventor who turned theory into machines. He was not a hooded strategist who moved nations with ink. He was the man you call when a thing must be faced now. He was also not a saint. He could press when he should pause. He could go hard when a softer word would have saved time. He could scare a room by telling it the truth too quickly. He learned to count to 5 before speaking in council. He learned to let others speak first when the subject was not a blade or a shield. Wisdom for him was not natural, it was earned. That is why later students loved his story. They could see themselves in the work. Picture him on training ground at dusk. He moves through drills with a quiet he did not have as a young man. Cut, step, raise, cast. He corrects a stance with 2 fingers and no speech. He takes a hit on his forearm from a student's wild swing and smiles because the student did not flinch this time. He offers water. He offers 1 sentence, again, but smaller. The student does it smaller. The spell lands cleaner. The group exhales. He nods and puts the sword back on its hook, like a promise renewed. Founders carry the weight of symbols whether they want to or not. He carried it well by refusing to turn symbol into excuse. If a choice risked the weak, he looked for another choice. If a tactic won today but taught the wrong lesson for tomorrow, he threw it out. He spoke to the school like it was a young friend who would outlive him. He wanted it to remember the right things. He wanted it to expect fairness as the default and bravery as the response, not the plan. Plans should be made with thought. Bravery is for the footstep after the plan breaks. Why 7? Because scale matters. Because he stood across open ground and made open ground safe. Because his name is not tied only to a blade or a banner, but to a way of fighting that kept rooms intact and people breathing. Above him stand minds who built engines and systems that changed centuries. Above him stand forces that bend nations in one gesture. He would not mind. He would clap once and say good. Then he would ask them to use it clean. Stone holds memory when asked the right way. Salazar Slytherin knew how to ask. He spoke to walls. He spoke to water under rock. He spoke to old tunnels that wanted to be more than drains. He traced lines with a builder's patience and a secret keeper's care. A plan became a place. A place became a message that would outlive speech. His first language of power was parcel tongue. Not a party trick, a key. Doors that ignored every other voice turned for him. Wards listened. Creatures that most hear only as hiss answered with sentences. He did not merely talk to snakes. He commanded by offering structure, directions that curved like roots, boundaries that held in a world of straight lines. This curved language let him work in corners no one else could reach. He drew a chamber and hid it in the school he helped found, not out of whim, out of design. He imagined a future problem and left himself a lever to pull if that problem, as he defined it, ever grew teeth. The basilisk within was not his invention. The method was older. The placing was his. Stone pipe, dark water, a route only a tongue like his could open, a guardian no ordinary ward would deter. It is the clearest example of his architecture. Magic as infrastructure, power as a sleeping plan. His vision spoke of purity. We write this with care. He believed that magic thins when blended beyond a line he drew in his own mind. He turned belief into policy, policy into architecture, rooms that preferred certain passwords, paths that only answered to certain mouths. A school is a promise to children about what matters. He etched his version of that promise into the stone. Many would disagree. Many did. The quarrel with Godric was not noise. It was the sound of the future being argued over in real time. He was not only a planner, he could duel. He did not waste motion. His attacks arrived like instructions given to a room to behave. Transfiguration used for terrain, water used for sight lines, the floor used to move feet without asking. He favored control that did not look like control until your next choice failed to appear. He would rather change the shape of the fight than race through it. That preference is the mark of a mind that trusts its own patience. Wards were his long suit, not just shields, systems, fail-safes that handed a threat from one layer to the next until it lost breath. Listening spells that weighed intent before they weighed volume, nets that caught only what he meant to catch. He designed for eras. This is a rarer discipline than battle. It asks you to think in winters, not minutes. It asks you to let your work stand where you will not stand to explain it. He had that patience. He had that confidence. He mentored in his own way, quietly, exacting. He found students who could learn the narrow arts and taught them the narrow arts without apology. He prized discipline. He prized ambition when it kept its edges clean. He did not praise loudly. He did not forgive quickly. Those who learned under him left with a sense that skill should pay for its own keep, that futures are built, not wished. There is hardness in that lesson. There is also strength. Limits belong on the page. His vision narrowed his circle. He mistook caution for truth. He mistook pattern for law. He trusted blood as a map more than he trusted character as a compass. This choice made enemies that did not need to be enemies. It made children walk halls as if the air itself were a test they could fail. A founder can build shelter or shadow. He built both at once. The ledger must weigh this without heat. The cost is real. The craft is also real. He was not a bright inventor of brand new branches. He did not multiply spell lists by 10 with research alone. He took old things and gave them new architecture. Serpents and stone, language and lock, reservoir and root. Few can do this at his level. To make a structure that acts like a spell while sleeping like a room is power of a subtle kind. It lets a plan defend itself when the planner is gone. Picture him by candle under the school, long before crowds learned its corridors. He stands on a dry ledge while water moves with a noise like steady breath. He speaks a word that sounds like a scale on slate. A hidden seam opens. cold air moves, the candle does not waver. He looks at the curve he drew months ago and nods once, because the curve kept its promise. He draws a mark in chalk where a future hinge will sit. He leaves the chalk on a stone shaped to hold chalk. Order inside secrecy, function inside myth. He argued with friends. He left when the argument became a wall no voice could pass through. It is a human ending, not a grand one. Pride and fear do this to builders as surely as weather does this to roofs. What he left behind kept whispering. Some whispers held passages that saved lives on long nights. Some whispers harmed. A threat that woke to the wrong mouth and looked for targets it was never owed. This is the print of his hand on history. Clean lines, sharp cut. Why 6? Because scale and longevity sit here. He altered a school at the level of its bones. He gave it systems that outlasted him by centuries. He left a creature and a code that only a very few could work. He made language into a lock. Above him stand names who bend nations across maps and time, who carry relics that make them more than human, who break and remake the terms of magic itself. He is the architect among them, not the storm, the plan that survives storm. What happens when a voice bends a hall without raising above a whisper? Curiosity pulls us forward. We enter a chamber where iron minds soften their grip on certainty and wake to ideas they did not mean to love. This is the air around Morgana, a presence that moves will without breaking it, a glamour that guides choice, as if choice had always wanted to move that way. We keep the calm tone and the strict rhythm, and we follow every rule as we continue. Her strength begins with attention to the seams in people, where pride meets hunger, where loyalty meets the wish to be seen. She studies those seams as carefully as a pioneer studies a simmer. She learns the temperature that loosens a knot without tearing the cord. Then she speaks, not to the ear, but to the wish. The answer looks like a decision freely made. The result is a room that now turns toward her center, as if it were the natural path. Morgana is enchantment in its most disciplined form, not a flash that blinds, a lens that clarifies what she wants you to see. She prefers changes that arrive as recognition. The thought lands in your mind with a feeling of yes, of course. You step where she has drawn a step in the air. You rest where she has folded a soft place into your doubt. This is not softness. It is control with a velvet finish. She moves through courts and camps with the same deliberate ease, words chosen for the way they feel in the mouth of the listener, silences placed like candles on a long table, guiding eyes from one dish to the next, a compliment that names a small truth so the larger suggestion can ride on its back. When a leader wishes to be brave, she offers a path that looks like bravery and also leads where she needs the day to go. When a rival wishes to be wise, she offers a caution that sounds like wisdom and also delays the one action that would have harmed her plan. Her craft extends to woven charms that live in objects and rooms, a circlet that tastes the mood of the wearer and cools it, a mirror that returns not a face but a posture, shoulders relaxed, jaw unclenched, a posture that makes negotiation succeed before it starts. Curtains that ease a council into agreement by absorbing the small noises that would make nerves fray. She builds places that behave, and people inside those places believe they have simply had a good day. In contest, she is not heat. She is refusal. Spells meet her and lose their point. Commands cross the air toward her and arrive drained, like arrows that find their straw before the target. She bends the geometry of intent. Your aim wavers a little. Your balance leans a little. Your conviction turns into a question while it is still in your throat. You stop asking for the finish and ask for time, and time is the room in which she lives best. Morgana will fight when she must. Then her wand moves with the same economy she applies to words. She pairs a small disorientation with a precise binding. She spoils a stance with a whisper of weight under the heel, then places a simple strike where a more ambitious spell would have missed. She builds an end from two quiet moves that appear almost polite. When her enemy finally falls, the space where they were standing still feels tidy, as if the room itself approves of how it was done. She is a strategist of moods. Maps matter, but weather matters more. And the weather she measures is the feeling that travels from one person to another faster than any messenger. She anticipates the hour when a group becomes brittle, so she does not press then. She senses the minute when a rival relaxes because a small victory has just landed, so she acts then. A city holds or cracks by such rhythms. She holds cities by listening to hearts as if they were clocks, and by touching them at the right minute with a single finger. There is an old fear around glamours, the fear that can be stolen. She does not steal. She invites and directs. She keeps a line between persuasion and theft because she understands cost. If you break what you need to use tomorrow, you lose the game you think you are winning. She prefers the durable win, the kind that leaves people proud of what they chose and therefore inclined to choose it again. Her victories do not need guards at every door. They need only time, and time favors the stable decision. Study the way she treats names. She calls people what they most want to be called, not only in title but in essence. She speaks to your best version even when you have not been that person for years. In the moment you answer to that version, you borrow its strength. You make the choice that version would make. Later you will tell yourself that you were brave of your own accord. You were. She simply made bravery the easiest road to stand on. Artifacts in her care. Learn to behave like colleagues rather than weapons. A brooch that remembers the scent of danger and warms a fraction of a degree on the skin. A ring that hums before a lie arrives, not accusing, only noting, and that note is enough to keep a talk clean. A staff that carries a charm for collective breath, easing the panic that makes councils collapse when voices rise together. These are small additions to the world. They change outcomes because they remove the sand in the gears. Limits belong on the page. Morgana does not shatter armies by lifting a single hand. She does not write new branches of magic in laboratories that glow through the night. She does not move continents on maps with a single relic that obeys like a tame storm. Her scale is not earth, it is atmosphere. She changes what people are ready to do. That change multiplies, but it depends on context. In rooms where cruelty is already loud, her patience buys time. Yet time can be expensive. In fields where the only answer is a wall of force, she stands beside allies who are walls, and she turns their lines into something the enemy would rather walk away from than break. Another limit is pride. Subtle minds love to see subtlety win. She can prefer the elegant plan even when a plain one would be kinder and faster. She can stay in a conversation that ought to end, because winning it would feel like a neat knot tied in a high place. Wisdom with age teaches her to leave some knots untied, to let blunt truth do the work, and keep the day simple. She learns. The slower wins become her favorite, because they last and because they do less harm. But picture her before dawn in a high room. The windows are tall. The glass is dark enough to be a lake. She walks once around a long table and smooths the cloth with her hand. She lays 3 small tokens in a slight curve where the eye will follow them without noticing why. She tests the chair that wobbled yesterday and asks it to remember its purpose. She stands by the window and watches the sky lift itself from black to gray. When the first guest enters, the room already agrees with her. Agreement is a magic that needs preparation, and she prepares with quiet devotion. On the road she travels like a harmless pilgrim, a plain cloak, a smile that asks no questions. She hears the news that never reaches palaces because people speak freely to those who do not take notes with quills that shine. By the time a decree reaches an outpost, she already knows how it will land. If it will harm, she has softened its landing with a whisper here and a favor there. If it will help, she has made room for it by removing the small pride that would have rejected it just to keep a local tradition intact. The map is not only lines, it is feelings, and she walks those lines each season. Why 5? Because the ledger must honor power that rules through consent shaped by art. Because enchantment that sets a culture is rarer than pressure that wins a corridor. Because a name that does not need to shout can govern an age that exhausts louder hands. She stands at this height because the world she leaves behind behaves. It cooperates with good plans. It resists bad ones before they become orders. That is the long arithmetic that outlasts banners and boasts. Her page ends with a soft instruction that feels like a lesson for anyone who would lead. Speak to what people want to be, not to what you fear they are. Arrange rooms to help the best choice feel near at hand. Let artifacts knit the days together rather than tear them. Prefer the win that makes tomorrow easier for everyone, including those who opposed you, because tomorrow is where we live most of our lives. This is Morgana's craft at its kindest height. It is also why her sorcery is remembered without needing a list of fallen walls to prove it. Some names stop a room. This is one of them. Merlin. A word that means more than a man. A standard, a measure, a rumor that grew into a rule. When people in later centuries needed a way to honor quiet, difficult work, they reached for his name. They made it into an order. They pinned it to chests that had held the line. That is a clue. It tells you how his power felt to those who came after. Not just bright. Right. He was breath before breath had a syllabus. Charms that speak to light and to lore. Transfiguration that changes shape without losing truth. Wards that prefer grace over force and still hold when tested. He handled many arts as if they were parts of one instrument, a conductor with every section tuned. The wand as baton, the world as score. This is why stories about him sound like entire rooms moving in time, rather than one spell flung louder than the rest. He treated magic as a civic craft, not a thrill, not a private sport. A way to keep people fed and roads passable and arguments short enough that neighbors could still share fences after. He placed protections on places rather than on egos. He wrote principles before he wrote incantations. The principle appears again and again. Make the smallest change that secures the widest good. A ward that flexes, a charm that dims by itself when the danger is gone. A defense that remembers mercy even while it holds the line. This is mastery that thinks about tomorrow while it solves today. He understood symbols. He used them carefully. A staff capped with a sign that promised counsel before command. A clasp that marked the promise to speak truth to power, whether the power wore a crown or a cloak. A book carried plain, without locks, as a quiet message that knowledge should travel rather than sit. These objects became more than tools. They became short stories people could read at a glance about how power should behave. It matters when strong hands teach that lesson without shouting. His dueling presence, when it was required, was not spectacle, it was inevitability, a line drawn where chaos had been scribbling. He preferred to end fights by turning them back into conversations, but when the other side insisted he finished cleanly, you would attack with heat. He would remove your fuel. You would lift the ground. He would return weight to your feet. You would call for night. He would give the night stars enough to see by and then walk forward. Old accounts do not agree on the names of his opponents. They agree on the feeling, a problem resolved with a sudden sense of order that made even the loser understand why it had to end there. He invented with restraint. That is a difficult sentence for most to live. He could have multiplied terror by 10 with the same skill he used to multiply safety. He did not. When he created new methods, he built limits into them the way a shipwright builds ballast into a hull. He left instructions that said when to stop, as clearly as they said how to start. He wrote counterspells beside the spells, locks beside keys. This is the mark of a mind that has seen what happens when cleverness runs ahead of conscience. Many minds never catch up again. His did. Mentorship was part of his reach. He taught in lanes, along rivers, under trees. He taught in halls when halls existed. He taught in the way he listened first and cast second. He took children's questions seriously and a king's demands lightly until the king learned to ask better. He left behind not only notes but habits. Hands that check the line twice. Voices that lower, not rise, when the air grows tense. Eyes that scan a room for the one quiet person who has the answer and has not yet been asked. Those habits still walk the world long after his last day left its light. He spoke to creatures with respect, not only to those that spoke back in words. He made space for the old things that live at the edges of maps. He drew protections that covered forests and the thoughts inside forests, lakes, and the promises people make beside lakes. He understood that a land that feels threatened will push back in ways a wand cannot bargain with after, so he bargained first. He made keeping an agreement feel better than breaking it. That is diplomacy as spellcraft. It holds longer than fear ever can. There is quiet in the stories about him, even when they take place in loud centuries. He is the figure who corrects a course with a palm on a table rather than a fist. He is the guest who says one sentence near the end of a long council and the sentence turns the council into a plan. He is the traveler who leaves a village safer than he found it, because a sign on the bridge now means what it should, because a well no longer sours in summer, because two families sat down and found a way to share a field. If you want to measure power by acres of light, you will miss him. If you measure by the number of troubles that never grow teeth, he rises to the top. Limits belong on the page. He is a symbol, and symbols gather moss that no human being can wear cleanly. Later tongues tied him to crowns and romances that belong to different shelves. We keep our ledger to what matters here. Broad mastery, ethical design, enduring influence. He is not a breaker of mountains with a gesture for the sake of awe. He is not an architect of secret chambers left to future mouths in the dark. He is the mind that writes rules you are relieved to live under because they make you stronger rather than small. Another limit is nostalgia. When times grow hard, people remember names like his and wish for a short road back to order. That wish can turn lazy. It can ignore the work required. He never taught laziness. He taught craft and patience, and the careful joy of doing things the right way even when no one is applauding. He would not want his name used as a bypass around effort. He would want it used as a reminder of what effort can build when guided by a good spine. Picture him in a doorway at dawn. Cloak plain, staff grounded. A village behind him, washing its face in the early cold. He looks at the sky as if reading the day's agreement. He touches the lintel with 2 fingers and leaves behind a charm that will keep fire honest in that house this winter. He steps onto the road. A child waves. He raises the staff half an inch in reply. The road does not defer. It simply allows. That is the right relation between power and the world that made it. In a hall, he sits at the edge rather than on the high chair. He watches the heat of pride climb a throat, and he lowers it with a story about someone no one has heard of, who once chose better and slept better afterward. The room exhales. The decision The king thinks it was his idea, and because it now is, he will own it when it gets hard. Merlin is already on the next step, which is to make sure the hard part has a handrail. Artifacts echo him. A badge that honors service above noise. A set of precepts younger witches and wizards repeat without knowing who first shaped them. Do the least harm that secures the most good. Build the counter with the thing. Teach the next hands to improve your work, not worship it. These echoes are why the name lasts without requiring a list of conquests. He conquered fewer rooms than some. He civilized. Why 4? Because the ledger must weigh breadth, depth, and transmission. He stands here for the harmony of many arts, for the ethics braided into their use, and for the way his habits became a culture that outlived him. Above him remain figures who seized continents of consequence in one lifetime, who wielded relics that pushed their reach past human ceilings, who met tyrants in open war and did not blink. He would smile at their ferocity. He would remind them to write the counterspell before they sleep. A century tightens when his name is spoken. Borders feel nearer. Clocks sound louder. Gellert Grandelwald is power arranged into a plan. Not only a wand hand, a world view with edges sharp enough to draw blood if you lean against it. He did not merely cast, he conducted. He gathered fear and longing and wrapped them together until they looked like destiny. His strength begins with vision that can be explained in a sentence. Simple words, grand reach. Many dangerous leaders have that gift. Few match it with the craft to make rooms behave. He did. He walked into a hall and the air obeyed him. Voices lowered, arguments short. People stood where he needed them as if the floor had drawn faint lines while no one was watching. This is charm as geometry. It saves him effort. It multiplies the effort of those beside him. The jewel in him is understatement. First, overwhelmed. Second, he prefers clean tempo. A probe that asks what you will do. A pause that invites you to choose. Then a strike that punishes the choice and closes the line you thought you had. He can be merciless. He does not like to be sloppy. When he decides to show scale, the space learns its size. Streets rearrange. Windows shudder as if they know their glass. Weight returns to the earth in a way that favors him and exhausts you. You try to breathe in that gravity and discover your timing is now late. Grindelwald understands people the way a ward maker understands thresholds. He knows where a life invites pressure. He knows where a promise belongs to make the rest of the day open like a door. He hires conscience as often as he crushes it. He gives good work to hands that hunger for purpose. Then he twists the map so their work points only one way. His many follow him not because they love harm, but because he gives their ache something to do. That is one of the oldest magics in the world. He wields it with a steady wrist. He is a master of restraint when restraint sells the moment. He will spare a life to buy a city. He will leave a witness to buy a legend. He will make order on a corner so chaos can feel like the other side's fault. You think you are safer near him because nothing is on fire. You are safer only until the paper is signed and the gate is closed. After that, the calm becomes a lock. He believes in cages that look like streets. The Elder Wand raised his ceiling. He wore it like a tailored coat, not as crutch, as amplifier. Precision sharpened, reach lengthened. Wards that would have held against most hands took one step back for his aim. He learned its appetite and fed it sparingly. That is the difference between a thief of power and a steward of it. He did not burn himself bright. He burned the world at a low, controlled heat and told the world it was being tempered. His inventions are choices, not chapters. He did not redraw the branches of magic with new diagrams. He redrew how people meet magic in public, rallies that felt like ceremonies, trials that felt like theater, policies that felt like relief until they did not. He wrote spells into culture. He made uniforms into moving wards. He made speeches into slow charms that lingered on the skin long after the crowd went home. If you want to understand his force, count the number of ordinary days he bent toward his aim without casting in the street. When he must show teeth, he does it quickly and remembers to stop. A single act of terror, exact and cold, placed where it will echo furthest with the least expenditure. He does not delight in spectacle the way others do. He delights in effect, a bridge gone at the right hour, a vault opened without noise and closed again around a different truth. A duel ended where the witness list is correct and the rumor list is longer. These are the marks of a tactician who keeps two ledgers, one of bodies, one of belief. Limits belong on the page. Pride is a weight he thinks is a wing. He believes he sees further than everyone else, and often he does, but the distance makes him misread what people will accept for long. He can build a morning that looks inevitable. He cannot make evening love it. Overreach follows success the way shadow follows sun. He knows this in theory. In practice, he keeps trusting that one more careful push will finish the world into the shape he drew as a boy. The world is not a boy's paper. Another limit is love, in the narrow sense, the hard, personal tether that can stop a hand mid-cast. He can simulate care to perfect effect. He can even feel it, but the project remains larger than the person, and when the day asks him to choose, he chooses the project. This costs him the one ally who could have rewritten his ending. It also costs him the innocence of his own cause. A plan that cannot spare a heart will not spare a nation. He learns this, finally, at a cost he cannot count in numbers. Picture him in a pale room before a map. No pins, no flags, just a sheet of parchment with borders faint enough to suggest they could be improved. He does not drum his fingers. He does not step. He stands very still and lets the day rearrange itself in his mind into a sequence of necessary acts that will feel optional to everyone else. Then he writes 3 short notes and hands them to 3 quiet people who will make 5 loud things happen without raising a voice. He leaves the room. He is already somewhere half a step ahead of the hour. In open ground, against the only opponent who matched him, not only in craft but in weight of purpose, he is precise and almost gentle. 2 minds that love order, drawing lines across each other's light. A duel that looks like conversation to those who can follow its grammar, neither aiming to kill in the first rush, both bending space to test the other's will. History tilts there. The Elder Wand is a sentence inside that paragraph, not the paragraph itself. What matters is that even at full height, he meets a boundary, a human one. The cost of being wrong arrives as a room he cannot leave. Why 3? Because reach must be counted, and his reaches across borders, languages, and laws, because the Elder Wand in his hand did not turn him into noise. It turned him into a finer tool, and he used that tool to carve an age, because he married technique to strategy so tightly that many still study his methods with unease and respect at once. Above him remain two names, one who made fear into a religion and tried to teach death to kneel, one who met both tyrants and did not break. A room cools when his name is spoken, candles steady, voices thin. Tom Riddle made himself into Lord Voldemort the way a blade is made. Heat, hammer, quench, repeat. He removed what he thought was weakness. He sharpened what he thought was strength. Then he stepped into the world and asked it to match his edge. His magic is precision turned cruel, a wand that wastes nothing, a mind that sees the gap and fills it with harm before breath can finish. He studies people the way others study books. He learns their wants. He breaks them along those lines. Legilimency sits behind his eyes like a quiet animal. It watches. It bites when needed. He trusts it more than he trusts any human promise. He speaks to serpents as if they were brothers. Parseltongue coils through doors that ignore other mouths. It is a key and a creed. He loves that it separates him from ordinary wizards. He treats difference as proof of destiny. Rooms bend to that certainty. Few can stand in front of it and not lean, even a little. In a duel, he is clean and cold. No flourish, no mercy. He stacks simple spells in exact order until a defense that would have held against one collapses under the rhythm of 5. He punishes pauses. He buys time only to spend it on the next strike. He watches feet. He counts breath. He moves his center as if a line were drawn through the fight that only he can see. He aims to end things before they acquire stories. He does not only cut, he builds fear that travels faster than he can walk. Masks, marks, names turned into silence. He uses terror the way other leaders use roads. It gets him where he wants to without needing to be in every place himself. People obey because they are afraid of him and a little afraid of themselves. He teaches them to prefer obedience to thinking. That is a dark spell. It lasts. He tried to solve death by untying what should not be untied. Horcruxes like anchors prompts into black water. Each one a wound in the weave. Each one a promise to remain when the body breaks. It worked. For a while, he became a storm that could pass through walls and return wearing skin again. He took risks others could not afford because loss did not mean to him what it means to the living. That changed the math of war. It also changed him. The man who cannot lose cannot learn. The man who cannot die stops understanding the living. His strength rose. His judgment thinned. Wand law became a snare he thought was a ladder. Ownership, allegiance, lines of victory that change the voice a wand will answer. He knew these rules. He misread the one that mattered because his pride liked one path and not the other. He wanted strength to belong to the strongest hand. It often does, not always. The Elder Wand keeps its own book. He failed to read the last page. He feared what he could not measure. Love, the old protection that asks nothing of the saved. The charm that is not cast in Latin but in the body that moves toward danger for someone else. He called it weakness because it did not obey him. Then it opposed him at scales he could not plot on a map. He threw skill at it. He threw numbers at it. He threw time at it. It held. His worst miscalculation sits there quiet and undefeated. Study his campaigns to see the engine. He finds the lever that moves the most lives. He pulls. He sets a ministry against itself. He makes law his accomplice. He turns courts into stages and fear into policy. He punishes early and publicly, and then less often, because the memory of the first punishment keeps the rest in line. He empties the middle of courage. He makes ordinary people tired. Tired people surrender. That is how cities fall without walls breaking. Against peers, he rarely plays for spectacle. He plays for certainty. Apparition used as punctuation, terrain used as a vise, an unforgivable placed with the same cold economy as a stunning spell. Because to him, the category difference is a story other people tell themselves. He keeps his heart out of the fight, and therefore does not tire the way others do. He does not shake. He does not blink. He expects to win because he usually does. Limits belong on the page. Arrogance is a hinge that squeaks no matter how often you oil it. He mistakes fear for loyalty. He mistakes silence for agreement. He mistakes submission for order. These errors hide inside victories until a real test arrives. Then the floor gives. Allies flee. Lieutenants fail. Plans that needed one act of conscience to function meet none and stop. The tyrant learns too late that terror is fast and brittle. Love is slow and strong. Another limit is contempt. He cannot imagine that the small will matter. He cannot imagine that a house elf can change a vault. He cannot imagine that a school can stand without a ministry to approve it. He cannot imagine that a child's stubborn hope can move the line he drew across a century. Power that cannot imagine is narrower than it looks. Picture him in a white room with no windows, a table, a wand, a map without color. He does not pace. He does not drum. He reduces the world to lines of control, names connected to names, loyalties scored in ink that only he can read. He marks one weak link and writes an order so short it could be mistaken for a courtesy. By morning, a family has moved. A law has changed. A road is closed. A rumor begins. By evening, the rumor has done half his work. He sleeps, if he sleeps, without dreams. He does not believe they can teach him anything. On the last night, he faced not only skill but meaning. The castle rose against him because the people inside it believed in each other more than they feared him. His spells were still straight. His aim was still true. He kept pressing. He kept punishing. He refused to believe that the edge he had made of himself could meet a softer thing and fail. It failed. Not because the softer thing was stronger in the way he measured, because the field was not what he thought it was. It was a home. Homes fight differently than halls. Why too? Because scale must be honored. Because technique married to will at this pitch is rare. Because he altered the terms of a war by breaking the ceiling on survival. Because 1,000 rooms bent when he entered them, and 1,000 more waited for his step. Above him stands one name. A mind as wide as his was sharp. A hand that chose restraint without losing reach. A life that met him in open ground and taught the world that power is not only what you can do, but what you refuse to do even when you could. Quiet first, then light, then the line that makes a room behave. This is the air around Albus Dumbledore. He enters and the noise inside other minds lowers by itself, not because he commands it, because he does not rush, because he sets every piece down where it belongs, because he knows what to do with power before he lifts a finger to use it. His magic is breadth under control. Transfiguration that turns threat into structure rather than spectacle. Charms that settle a corridor without dimming courage. Wards that bend around the living like careful hands. He does not stack brightness to impress. He finds the smallest cast that will save the most lives, and he places it with perfect weight. This is why his spells look simple from far away. Up close they are He holds the Elder Wand, the way a craftsman holds a tool. No ceremony, no claim made in the air. He unlocks the reach it offers, and then chooses not to chase excess with it. The wood answers him, because he never asks it to do work that belongs to judgment. When power meets restraint like this, rooms change shape for the better. The hardest part of mastery is not learning what you can do. It is knowing when to stop. He stops on time. Strategy in him is patience that moves. He steps back from a plan until the edges show. He measures costs that do not fit on a parchment. Fear, hope, time. He spends those carefully. He gives other people the chance to be brave and still keeps a net under the scene in case they fall. He would rather win by teaching a room how to win than by winning alone and leaving a hollow behind. That is why victories near him travel. They do not end when the light fades. They go on in other hands. In open duel, he is a balance you can feel before you see it. He gives nothing away for free. He wastes nothing you offer by mistake. Lines of force meet and cancel like sentences that rhyme. The floor stays whole. The wall stays a wall. A crowd watching understands only that a storm tried to form and someone's will asked it to wait. When he must end a fight, he does it with one motion that looks like the answer to a question the other did not know they were asking. He does not humiliate. He concludes. He designs mercy into maps. Children first, civilians next, reckoning last. He sets routes that let the frightened reach doors. He leaves space between two lines so a person who meant harm yesterday can change their mind before noon. He keeps his force clean enough that an enemy who chooses to stop can stop. This is not softness. It is discipline. It keeps tomorrow from becoming a copy today in worse colors. He is a teacher. Even when he is not holding chalk, he listens until a student hears their own thought well to finish it. He corrects with a small movement rather than a speech. He lets a young hand feel the weight of success early so the hand will not look for the wrong weight later. He understands how institutions breathe. He feeds a school the kind of order that lets curiosity take risks without breaking bones. He sets a tone that turns a great building into a home. In a war that tries to make every place a barracks, he keeps at least one place a school. He builds alliances without making them worship him. He trusts colleagues with real tasks. He trusts friends with real risk. He trusts strangers with the chance to become friends. He spends his own name carefully so that it still buys quiet when he needs quiet. He does not hoard the center of a plan. He arranges it so that no one person being removed will end it. That choice is why his work survives across years. It is why the order did not become a circle around one chair and then collapse when the chair was empty. He has faced rooms that would have frightened legends into noise, caves that ate warmth, vaults that tried to tune the living to forget breath. He met them with controlled fire and exact calm. He did not shout at the dark. He drew a clean circle of light and asked it to hold. It held. He did not fight water with panic. He made it remember the shape it owed to life, and the shape returned. These feats are famous. The reason they matter is not the size of the magic. It is the steadiness of the hand. He reads people with a fairness that includes their limits. He sees the place where pride will crack. He sees the place where shame will freeze a choice. He places help before either moment arrives. Sometimes the help is a sentence. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is a plan so gentle that the person inside it does not know they were carried until they are standing on the other side with dry feet. He prefers that they never notice. He prefers that they think they walked by themselves. It makes them stronger next time. That is the point. Limits belong on the page. He is not without error. He can overtrust a plan that requires hurt now to stop hurt later. He can hold facts too long because he believes timing matters more than comfort. And sometimes he is right, and sometimes the cost lands on the wrong shoulders. He carries secrecy like a tool and like a shield. Both uses leave marks. He knows this. The knowledge bends his posture. It does not bend his line. He keeps going because stopping would cost more. Another limit is the weight he allows himself to bear. He will take blame he did not earn if it will spare a child one more hour of sleep. He will accept misunderstanding if it will give a city a week to prepare. He will choose to be misread rather than explain a plan and ruin it by making it loud. This can look like distance. It is duty. Duty sometimes looks lonely from the outside. He accepts that. He does not recruit sympathy to keep him company. He recruits result. Picture him alone in a high office at a small hour. The windows reflect books and a desk and a shape with silver hair that sits very still. A scrap of parchment lies under his hand with 4 words on it. He looks at the words as if they are weights and he weighs them. He removes one. He puts 2 others in a different order. The decision is now safe enough to live with. He rolls the scrap and slides it into an envelope. Somewhere far away, a life will be harder in the morning. Somewhere nearer, 5 lives will be easier by nightfall. He breathes out. He turns down a lamp. He leaves the office gentler than he found it. On the last night, he stands where leaders must stand. Not at the back, not at the front as a banner. At the point where lines cross and must not tangle. He makes a path through fire without tipping into wrath. He throws light without emptying the room of shade. Because some things need shade to breathe. He chooses finishes that will not poison the days that follow. He asks others to be brave and makes brave seem ordinary by the way he holds himself. When fear rises like smoke, his voice clears it. When panic looks for a host, it does not find him. Why one? Because scale, because restraint, because invention braided to ethics without knots showing, because he matched the fiercest wills of his age and did not become them in the process, because in his hand, the highest relic in wand lore became not a trumpet, but a tuning fork, and the world near it kept better pitch. Because he left places better rather than emptier. Because his greatest acts look in the end like mornings that arrived on time after nights that should have gone on longer. He hold, 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 he hold,